Welcome to the weekend must watch here on Intercut, the weekly show going through all the movies, TV, and news you can't cut away from. I'm your co host Arturo Zurita, and joining me to eat a whole fresh slice of pie. None of that extras from the sewers. No. Some good old, big old scars pie, the scarf down. Zachary Chevy!
I'm getting my list ready because I know you're going to be out here in New York for the festival in a couple months. So we got to do our own pizza tour, hit up Scars, hit up Finney, hit up Lindustry. A lot of good spots we got to make sure we try while you're here.
We're going to be like the turtles.
Yeah, just full of
Had a
pizza.
whole
We got a
new,
bucket?
probably one of the best movies they've come out. Dude, yeah. I went to theater. My sister and I have a thing with the turtles. We always go. We have a specific turtle each. And we went this year, and they've never had buckets like this in the past. We're going in. We're not even going to worry about the popcorn, nothing like that. But I see they have this entire sewer bucket like collection up there. You open
Manhole
the
and
bucket,
everything.
there is more artwork in there
Ooh.
that just looks gorgeous. Inside the bucket, they had a bandana, which ended up being Michelangelo, which is my sister's favorite. Then they had a
Nice.
cup, so you can get whatever drink you want. And then they had like this little like action figure to go on the top of it. So, hey, shout out for the theaters for coming out and actually giving us good buckets for this.
Yeah, make it worth
the
your
Oppenheimer
while.
bucket was a bust. The Barbie one was cool, but it was way too expensive. This is one of the coolest ones that I've collected so far. So it's still steep for the popcorn prices at a theater, but I thought it looked really cool. And if you were there in time, they were also giving out like these little comic books. I think if you saw it in
Ooh.
Adobe, I'm not exactly sure, but a better one than that since we're on the topic of pizza. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, baby. I know that their sponsor in the movie was like a Pizza Hut, I think, out of everything. But if you had the chance to go score one of these, oh, cheesy goodness. It just, as they say, oozes out of that artwork.
Yeah, postery goodness right there. They did not have those at my theater, unfortunately. You seem to always get the good swag in Chicago.
Hey, all this talk about me wanting to leave Chicago for New York or something like that. Finally! Finally! So, you have some cool things if you were able to catch them over in your local theater for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, because I think that's the one I went all out for.
Hmm.
The Meg got ate up. But that is all the movies that we're going to be discussing this week in terms of what's in theaters, some stuff in streaming from last week that we missed, some TV that both you and I have wrapped up on the single. Maybe they're both miniseries. Maybe only one of them is. We don't really know. Zach finally finished one. We're going to be discussing that along with our picks in the week. But overall, I got a bunch of pizza swag. Zach, how was your week in movies?
My week was like a bit cheesy, but mostly good. Mostly, catching up on TV. Like we were talking about, there's a lot of shows that I feel like we had that deluge at the end of the Emmy cycle, and then a whole bunch of
May.
stuff since then that I'm just trying to get towards the end of, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. Although, I also went back a little bit too. I rewatched Amadeus for the first time in many years after getting the inspiration from Oppenheimer. I mean, talk about a classic, man. Are you into Amadeus? That's one of my favorite movies.
I freaking love Amadeus. Is one
Yeah,
of those movies when you're a young chap
all
getting into film,
timer.
but you watch it and you go, "Oh, I could sit for like 2, almost 3 hours, and it be a fantastic movie." Movies. It reminds you that movies don't need to have these random filler. Within
Hmm.
every single piece can hit. Yeah, no, that's I need to rewatch it. I don't think Alina's ever watched it. So,
Ooh,
and you're right with the influences there, specifically with Oppenheimer and Strauss.
yeah. There's
That was
so
what
much of
Robert Downey.
That Salieri performance in Robert Downey's
Oh, that's a good
performance.
one. You know which one I wanted to catch? JFK. For
Yeah,
my Oppenheimer rewatch as
that's on
well.
my
But
list too for
yeah,
Oppenheimer research.
is it streaming somewhere? Amadeus.
That's a good. Oh, no, actually, that's a good thing to point out. It is not streaming anywhere. Luckily, I own that DVD. Like, you got to pay at least $4.90 or $3.99 if you want to catch it until Netflix or somebody decides to add it back to one of their services.
Speaking of inspirations dealing with the one RDJ, you also can't stream Tropic Thunder.
Really?
Nah,
That's a
man.
shame.
I had to shell out the $9.99 in order to catch that movie.
Damn. Or hope you own it on DVD. JFK
Mm.
is on Max, by the way. So that
Hmm.
part of my adventure will be a little bit easier to conquer.
Yes, sir. Speaking of, I think it's also HBO that may have a lot of William Friedkin movies because that was one. I think we've been having a
Right.
lot of
Rest in
passings
peace.
in terms of filmmakers and actors. Pee Wee Herman, literally in the midst of us recording Barbie and talking about the Barbie world.
Hmm.
We had heard about Pee Wee's passing last week. William Friedkin has always been someone who, anytime I follow a lot of film people who like run bookstores or are teachers and such, they always share the craziest commentaries because the thing with William Friedkin is like his commentaries are great, but a majority of them you need to be like a collector because they were being released in these like limited edition books or certain DVDs, or you had to be at these places. Matt Zoller Seitz, shout out him. He's always like updating stuff from his bookstore, and he has some fantastic ones throughout the years dealing with William Friedkin talking about
Hmm.
why certain people laugh during his movies. This man was in tune in every single movie that he made, man. That's all I'll say about this dude. From The French Connection to The Exorcist, he made movies like he wasn't speaking to the main audiences, but it spoke to the main audiences because he knew exactly who those movies were geared for. Like
Hmm.
The Exorcist has been called demonic so many times that it's like he made a deal with the devil in order to make that. If you haven't heard stories from The French Connection and like the car chase sequence being one where they didn't even stop the traffic, one of the greatest filmmakers. Nowadays, you hear people talking about the 70s. This man was the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, obviously his name is attached to so many iconic films, but I think the thing that you're talking about is that he's one of our uh, best truth tellers amongst directors, like somebody
Oh,
who
well put.
uh, does not uh, does not lighten his comments for certain audiences. He will give you
No.
unvarnished truths, and he's not afraid to speak about people who are like powerful and people that who he's like had a personal connection to. Like just seeing some of the things that he said about working with like Al Pacino and stuff. It's just
Yeah.
it's exciting to hear somebody particularly as like gifted and as attached to as many iconic films as he is speak frankly and without any kind of like filter about this topic. So he's definitely a person that not only contributed a lot of really amazing art, but just has a great way of being able to describe it and articulate it. And yeah, definitely a
True.
tragic loss. Any Friedkin movies in your queue for what you want to catch up with or revisit, inspired by the news?
I feel terrible that the last thing that I saw from William Friedkin while he was still alive
Hmm.
was his documentary about Father Amorth for the Pope's Exorcist. I think it is one of the because you're talking about him being a truth teller, and I agree
Right?
with you. And then I'm remembering the worst documentary that he made.
Yeah. Yep.
But the one I guess there's a lot of movies that you can catch from him, and I think all of them are probably gonna be fantastic movies. Just the fact that like Killer Joe, I don't know if you remember that one with Matthew
I
McConaughey.
love Killer Joe, man. Yeah.
Killer Joe is off kiltered completely, especially that chicken drumstick scene.
Yep.
It's too out there. But one of the things that I'll bring up that I was mentioning earlier was this idea that I think it's when they were showing the French Connection, and it was early on. There was a sequence in the French Connection where there you go, Killer Joe with Matthew McConaughey. It is a bonkers movie, is all I'll put.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, he's had it with him all the way till the end. But there was one particular instance in the movie The French Connection where some like racial things are said.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who curate this movie, right, because it's obviously older, so you got a lot of IFCs, especially in the year Zach. That's where I heard this happening a lot in. Theater owners or curators who were putting this as a part of their like lineup, but then we're like upset that people weren't reacting the way that they wanted them to react, which one is
Hmm.
hilarious to me. That's just one conversation to be had there that you think as a theater owner, you're going to tell audiences how to react to your movie. But it was specifically audiences who were laughing at the racial undertones of the movie and nobody knew why. And theater
Yeah.
owners, mind you, white theater owners, wanted to cut the movie because they thought they weren't depressed or upset when the police officer was yelling at the black guy on screen. Again, it was Zoller Zeitz who brought up an interview about how William Friedkin hung out with the people in all of these movies. I think you were mentioning the one with Pacino, where he made Pacino dress up in the
Cruising.
gay outfits.
Yeah.
And so did he, like him and his cinematographer, in order to film in the nightclub, were also dressed up in like
Yep.
thongs. So for the sequence in the French Connection that people were complaining about, they're like, why are they reacting this way? William Friedkin, like again, it's in a book inside of a book inside of a book. The quote where he claimed that he went to these nightclubs, that he went to these boroughs, and he realized how to make them laugh in an anniversary right now that they're calling what is it, the Memphis, Alabama? I can't remember where this steamboat brawl happened this past week, which might have
Montgomery.
been the biggest streaming premiere of the week. There's this idea of how he saw the humor in things that people felt guilt in. He saw the
Yeah.
humor.
Well-
He saw the thing that people would laugh at when other people would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing specifically with the French Connection that it was being censored. I think it was on Disney Plus, and they were taking out the like uses of racial slurs, the N word in it. And I think there's the story going around on Twitter about how a lot of black audiences really responded to those moments because they were
You heard
seeing
it, yeah.
truth reflected on the big screen in a way. So like while we sometimes worry about the depiction of racists in cinema to not necessarily depict uncomfortable truths for the truths they are, is also to deny our shared
Yep.
realities, right? And
Exactly.
that's made people upset through a lot of his work, whether it is stuff like French Connection or it is stuff like Cruising, or even more recently with Killer Joe is not exactly the most friendly film to watch, and that
Nope.
Gina Gershon scene that you were talking about is burned into my brain for better or worse. But yeah, like I think the filmmakers who are able to explore these areas with a level of honesty and a level of intrigue are extremely valuable. Although you are talking about something that has been an interesting trend that I've noticed as well in the laughing at repertory screenings. I think some of it is just that modern audiences aren't used to dealing with discomfort, and a lot of us choose to laugh at discomfort to try to like undercut that unease. Like there's all these reports coming out at people laughing at like the scenes of assault in Irreversible, which is just about like the least comedic scenes out there. But
sure.
I different people respond to discomfort in different ways. So
100%.
I don't know. Part of me gets it, but also like I agree with this post that I'm showing online. Like not every movie is Airplane. Learn when to express laughter in a public setting.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's true. I do think as audiences, I mean, we're dealing right now with people going back to theaters, wondering why people are on their phones, and you and I are like, they've been, like it hasn't changed. I guess welcome back to theaters, but it's always been the same. You know, the ACs have never worked. Kids have always been on their phone, and those fights you've been seeing, those fights were happening before. But yeah, I would just say theater owners, the solution is not to censor the movies or to control how people are going to react. There's another roundabout way to get there, but no, rest in peace to the artists we've been losing. But let's celebrate movies in the best way we know how here on the Intercut podcast, which is to talk about all of the new stuff that is out this week. I see we have had a beautiful subscriber who's been in the chat for such a long time. And I feel like if your name is at TMNT Addict, you might have been in a particular place this weekend watching a little movie known as Mutant Mayhem, the newest film from who they're calling Primitive Teenager, Seth Rogen. Comes the ugliest, Zach, the most grotesque looking animation for the whole family that I've seen this year.
Yeah, a lot of people are rushing to connect this one to Spider-Verse because it does have sort of like more of a hand-drawn style, comic booky look to it. But it is a lot grungier and slimier and uncomfortable to look at than most of Spider-Verse.
Honestly, the adults here look disgusting. They look like they were put in a blender. In Space Jam, when they grab Michael Jordan and they like squeeze his head, the Monstars, in order to make him to a basketball. That's what every adult looks like here. The turtles that are mutants look the best.
Yeah.
But they're fighting a villain that is this fly. It looks uglier than Jeff Goldblum's transformation. You have this like sequences where people are projectile vomiting. They are suckling on rodent lips. This is just scratching the surface of what makes this movie utterly despicable. And yet, this is the first time they said that they've cast nothing but kids for the voice actors,
Mhm.
and they absolutely killed it. I think that the
Absolutely.
writing was really on point when it came to actually making them feel like a bunch of kids just getting together, teenagers who have never been in the real world, and they cast did a killer job. One of them that I definitely wanted to shout out, two of them in particular, actually all four of them. Let's start with the end. Do you know who Brady Noon is?
No, tell me more.
It's the boy from Good Boys. He was the one who does all the
Oh,
singing. It was like his second role of all time.
yeah.
He had done a little Boardwalk Empire. He was one of the three kids in Good Boys. So obviously he already had that Seth Rogen connection. Comes in, I thought killed it here, did a really good job. Then you have Nicholas Cantu, who is one of the voices who did Gumball. You already know.
Hmm.
I'm a huge Gumball fan.
Yeah.
I thought he killed it. Shout out Shaman Brown Jr. from Michelangelo. But Micah Abbey, to me, was the standout here as Donatello. Donatello, I think, had the best moments in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Easily. I don't know if you had any favorites or what your favorite
I mean,
jokes in the movie were, but the banter
I
they had
just
was
love
fantastic.
I just love in general that they chose to cast the main mutant ninja turtles in this youthful way. You know, I feel like you're probably the more knowledgeable person when it comes to the different iterations of this franchise, but I don't remember them ever going quite so young in the depiction of them. And
Nah.
it feels like far more in spirit with the show or the film itself, like the type of jokes that they're going for, the type of attitude that makes sense for these people to have. It makes sense for to skew a little bit more young, and I think it just feels like cohesive. It feels like it matches in a way that I don't know if I felt watching like the Michael Bay produced Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or anything like that. So I really like the voice, and Donnie's voice in particular. He's the one who has like the most highest pitched of all of them, right?
Yeah.
Like his voice
Yeah.
is dropped the
Like the
least,
kid.
but it's great. It's
Yes.
having that contrast is really really exciting, and like particularly when they have those moments where they overlap each other and they're all sort of excitedly jabbering, like it feels very youthful and true and fun and alive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was a really smart decision on their part.
Again, I think Good Boys has been the one that does it best. I know that one had a little bit of a pushback because people didn't like boys acting bad, which yeah, that is what kids do. This
Yeah.
would be the more PG version of it. So this is your PG Good Boys, where I think the banter works really well. There are certain moments, I don't know if you felt this, where the writing for them felt a little bit more organic than when they made them deliver it. There are a lot of references in this movie.
Yeah.
I never got bored with any of them, but I did feel bombarded by them, if that made any sense. Like,
Yeah.
left.
It's so many references that it feels like it's written by a comedy writer rather than
Then the
you know the
kids.
than the kids themselves, like particularly when they reference properties that probably came out before any of these voice actors were born. And you know, I think they do a good job for the most part of keeping, like I was saying, the energy feeling youthful, keeping the spirit of like this is a movie for kids alive. But through some
Yeah,
of those references, and especially through the music, like you can tell it's also gearing to people our age. And like I'm not complaining about a soundtrack full
exactly.
of all these 90s hip-hop classics, but
It
like
was,
yeah,
oh,
that is
yeah.
definitely one for the people who maybe became parents rather than the kids itself.
Yeah. Uh, it's like you don't want to complain about it, but at the same time, it's like I love the soundtrack, but it really, this really is somebody else's soundtrack, not theirs. There's also
Yeah.
just the factor of like they're very knowledgeable, and there's a part of it where it's like you remember that documentary, the Wolfpack, where the kids all loved movies because their like dad never let them leave the house, so
Yeah.
all they knew was how to recreate all these classic movies. These four kind of have that, but they do leave the house. They
Hmm.
do have phones. They are on social media. So I'm like, is that only going to stop for you to reference like an end game fun fact? For you to give me these little poster cards of like the Chris's of Hollywood? I was wondering what else they could have done with that knowledge of them being able to have these secret identities, not just as the turtles who are ninjas, but like online. Could they do something? Could they not catfish, but I don't know, shellfish some people if they wanted to? Like, I feel they would be a lot more clever with the technology that has now been introduced to these teens, right? You have to go like fully in. They want to go to high school. Okay, well, with high school comes this idea that everyone in a physical building cares more about their digital selves. That's just me wanting more, a little bit more out of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah.
But the banter that they had with each other, I think worked a majority of the time. Sometimes it does feel like they're setting up for the bit more than anything else. But really what matters is the characters and how they bond with each other. I'm trying to pull one up here of Jackie Chan, who absolutely ate it up as Master Splinter. If I could find one of him.
Well, that whole bond between the Mutant Ninja Turtles as like these kind of brothers and Splinter as their pseudo dad, I thought all of that aspects of it worked really well in this film. Like the familial bond feels more real than it typically does in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle adaptations. So there's just like a really cool vibe to it too. I don't know. I just really dig the larger collection of characters assembled here, even beyond the familiar ones. There's a lot of new ones, particularly the whole Superfly gang that we get introduced to has a lot of really fun voice actors in it as well.
What do you think of Ice Cube?
I mean, I loved his reference. What was the police knocking at my door? Yeah.
I was like, come on, bro. I was also surprised how many times he got away with going, what the hell? What the hell? What the hell?
It definitely pushed PG. I was surprised.
And look, that's the one thing that I'll appreciate. Even when I was looking at Superfly and just utterly disgusted by like I don't even think flies have saliva, but the ooze that was coming out of him, I was like, you know what? But I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want a clean version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It needs to be this grimy, like you said.
Scuzzy, they're from the sewers.
But talk about them. I'll flip through them. You let me know which ones were your favorites.
I mean, I'm always down for a Paul Rudd cameo, but I feel like they were also very in love with this Paul Rudd character.
Yeah, people were really digging him.
Yeah. Anyone's in particular that stood out to you from the larger cast?
I thought it was interesting to have Seth Rogen and John Cena as Bebop and Rocksteady. I thought they were pretty decent. I can see them getting a lot more in a future movie. Felt like setup for sure.
I really like Nastasia Dimitru, who played Wingnut. She's very funny on What We Do in the Shadows. Just has a very kind of sing-songy comedic voice.
That was her. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we talk about our girl though, Io?
Let me see. Let's see if I can pull her up right here. Fantastic. April O'Neil. Mind you, we are going, as someone reminded me right now, from Megan Fox being April O'Neil to her. I thought it fit perfectly. There's a running gag with her as well that, while still disgusting all throughout, did make sense for her character. So it has been her summer.
And look, there were like little children in my screening of Mutant Mayhem, and those were their favorite bits. All
really.
All that gross stuff. They
physical comedy
at it. Yeah.
Nah, she did a fantastic job. I think the fit they had on for her, this idea of wanting to be a reporter. Again, in my mind, I was still wondering who's reading the newspaper in this digital age. But whatever. I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how they carry on with her character, especially now that, well, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but how it develops between her realizing who the Turtles are and where they're going to take that. Some of the other ones would have been, you had mentioned Natasha. Giancarlo Esposito comes in really quick as the guy who creates the ooze. And I was like, okay, cooking again. Hannibal Buress played, I want to say the leapfrog looking character.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't have a lot to do. I didn't even realize it was him until the credits rolled.
Yeah, not much because, and I don't know if the other one will appear, but there is another character who sings. It's Post Malone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I'll have the Mr. Beast one in here, but that was a big thing too as well for Mr. Beast being one of the people in the Times Square flashback. Maya Rudolph coming in as a villain. I want to say Maya also had a role in a Spider-Verse movie. I feel maybe I could be mistaken, but maybe she's playing.
She's a good voice actress.
Yeah, she's like the overarching villain for what they may be wanting to do with this franchise. Of course, he had to bring in his girl, Rose Byrne, coming in to play another Aussie here in The Alligator. And it was pretty much all of the voice actors. If I'm not mistaken, Seth Rogen also had done a voice there. Here's the Post Malone one. Yeah, all he does is sing. But I don't think he has something in the soundtrack. But
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they're also trying to make this part of like the larger world of characters too. Are you excited about the idea of continuing with this extended cast? You know, the movie made a little over 28 million at the box
oh,
office
that's not bad.
domestically this weekend, which is
That's decent.
solid. And it seems like we'll probably get a sequel at some point whenever
Yeah.
the various strikes end. So are you excited for it?
For sure. Hey, I need more outings to this. Like I said, this is the one franchise my sister and I go all out for.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever bucket they may have, I think they have a fantastic post-credit scene. I think that the banter that they have with the kids is really good. Plus, they're really good voice actors. I'm excited to see what they have in the future. And the only thing that I would say that I'm learning to embrace is this idea of, are the jokes going to age already? But in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie like the '90s one, where all of those jokes aged, is that not the point? Bring them. I think that they're each just period pieces of how cringy, how grimy, how disgusting teens are at a certain point in time, told through four Ninja Turtle brothers. So I'm excited for more. I thought this one was really funny, really disgusting, and a good time in theaters. Fantastic
Nice.
soundtrack though. So if you do get to catch it in Dolby, I think you got like a couple more days. Woo!
Yeah.
Great
Not just the
mixing.
soundtrack too. We should give a quick mention at least to the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross score. Like
Thank you.
that's
Have you seen the titles?
no, actually, I didn't read through it.
Talk about it and I'll pull them up.
Well, I just like it's a abundance of riches to have your animated kids movie scored by potentially the like most iconic film composers of the past decade. That being said, it did remind me a lot of Daniel Pemberton's work on the Spider-Verse movies. I don't know if that's intentional or
Mm,
unintentional.
I think
With
just
the
so
like
much
heavy
things that's
synths and stuff.
yeah, I can see that. I'm trying to pull it up right here. This is what we have for the score as track titles. I saw this get posted up, Zach, and I didn't believe it.
Mhm.
I was out on vacation, and I had to pull it up myself to realize. Are you ready?
Yeah.
The man in the basement. Dipshit's on a roof. Murder the Shreks. You know, some normal titles until you start
Yeah.
getting to like, I just met you, you almost killed. Zach, read number 16.
Megamind Gru type shit. Very, very kid friendly soundtrack here.
She's gonna milk us. Enter the 37th chamber is when I knew, okay, they're working on something.
Yeah.
Better than Mark Ruffalo. They have like the most insane titles for a kids movie score.
So funny.
So yeah, they're going all out with it. Yeah, shout out the boys for working on this. Fantastic. Had they done an animated movie?
That's a good question. I would guess not, but maybe they
What-
were
what
brought
if
in
they
for
won?
one of the Pixar movies. They didn't do like what was the one, Soul? Were they in that?
They might have done so. You are correct. Okay.
Yeah,
This is more up their alley. Teenage Mutant Ninja
definitely.
Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, out in theaters. Let us know your thoughts. What your favorite TMNT movie may be out of all of them. So, I think this one is definitely a good way to take the franchise. Beautiful animation. Good movie out in theaters. Another one that
Nice.
is out in theaters, in case you didn't want disgusting and you wanted horror instead, the family-friendly ride from Disney has returned with another movie. There are more Disney theme park ride adaptations than there are. I don't know, whatever else you may want adapted toys. Look, I am a sucker for this kind of genre. I don't think it's the worst. I haven't loved all of them. You know that you have your Tomorrowlands, but then you have your Pirates of the Caribbean, and I don't think anything has touched the original Pirates. I know that the franchise ended up becoming like so the third one ended up becoming the most expensive movie ever made, and then was also like the most highest grossing movie ever made. So I understand why they're always trying to make these a thing, because it's like this full circle. You watch the movie, it makes a buttload of money. You buy it on DVD. They got stuff to sell. You go to the theme park.
Yeah.
They already tried it with Haunted Mansion,
20
and
years ago.
this is a remake of the Eddie Murphy one, and it doesn't
Is
fix
it
what I think they were trying to. Or sorry, not a remake, but like they're remaking it. It's another
reimagining?
adaptation, reboot. It's
Yeah.
a theme park ride
It's
movie.
a
Zach,
it's a re-movie.
what did you think?
Look, I mean, I said this in my Letterboxd review. If this was a Disney Channel original movie and this was the year 2003, I feel like it'd be a pretty solidly entertaining thing.
Mm-hmm.
But because
It's
of
not 2003.
the year we're in, this movie costs like $50 million more to make than Oppenheimer did, and it's got like a bunch
What's the
of
budget?
man, the
What's the
budget's like
budget?
150 million.
What? Why?
I don't know.
Oh, the
And
12-track digital sound. That's why.
and it doesn't look that good, and
She.
like there's some celebrities, but it's not exactly like
Ooh,
it's star-studded. Like I love Lakeith Stanfield and Owen
for sure.
Wilson, but are they each getting $20 million to appear in this thing? Like I'm not.
No, Jared Leto is for covering his face.
I don't really get it. You know, it's like it's inoffensive enough. Like there's jokes in it, and none of them are ones that I can like easily remember because they're all jokes that have been recycled from other better things. But you know, if you're like a little kid, that you probably don't know that it's a bunch of recycled stuff. There's a little bit of slapsticky humor, and personally, I think the movie could be good if you are like the father to or the uncle of a kid who has a mild interest in scary things. If you want to take your child to their first horror movie, you could do worse than Haunted Mansion.
For sure.
But there's nothing there for an adult. There's just no depth to anything. It's all on the surface. It's all a retread of other familiar ideas. You know, maybe if you're like a big Tiffany Haddish fan, she's kind of fun in this movie. I just don't see other reasons to go other than like you need something to babysit a child with.
I didn't hate the movie,
Yeah.
but I do agree with you. It doesn't commit all the way as much as it could.
Mhm.
But in the sense of it being that gateway horror movie for kids, sure.
Yeah.
It is definitely scarier than the first one. Not by a lot, but it is more on the scary side. It does have its jokes. You had mentioned Tiffany Haddish. I would argue I needed more Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Danny DeVito,
I mean,
I
if
think,
this
has a standout punchline.
look, if there was more Danny DeVito in this thing, I might recommend it. But
Exactly. I agree with you. They almost tried to kick him out of the movie. I was like, no, 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 no. I came here for one person only. I didn't even get to mention that they gave us a couple of these cards. I'm sorry, Zach. They really do give us these, like,
no, we got those too.
Are supposed to be cards. Who'd you get? Please don't tell me you got Danny DeVito. I was gonna go back and return mine for Danny.
I got my man's from the Underground Railroad, which was a weird
Same,
thing.
I got
to have
him
in my
too,
head
bro.
while watching it.
I had him too. I think Alita got Tiffany Haddish. I ended up getting him, but yeah, I like the back. They were kind of decent for what they were.
Yeah. Caitlin, who'd you
The
get? Did you get
movie.
Lakeith? Caitlin got Lakeith.
Oh, she got Lakeith. Well, let me talk about Lakeith in this movie because I know this was a script that was floating around, and in particular, this came from Justin Simien, who I don't mind. I realize the man tries to be a provocateur more than anything. You know, I've sat and I've enjoyed the stories that he's tried to tell, and I've realized, okay, you got a pattern here. You like to lead in a certain way. Oh, show the Lakeith one. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, he looked clean the whole movie.
He looked great.
Only to
Good-looking
realize
man.
he had a hairpiece the entire time and he got to keep it. So shout out to him, I guess, there. But speaking of, Bad Hair was a horror movie that Justin Simien had done at Sundance a couple years ago. I enjoyed it. I wanted him to get, clean up some of the effects. They did not clean up some of the effects. It is now up on Hulu, completely out. He got the money for Haunted Mansion, and I know that his big approach here was the story of Lakeith Stanfield's character who begins the film losing a loved one. So there's this big idea of grief. And I had heard people discussing that there was this whole push for the ride to get rid of the noose man when you're going through the, I guess, the hallways or something, or maybe when you're already seated. There's a guy who, kills himself on the ride, and they're like, yeah, I don't know if we should have this on the ride. This whole movie is about taking your life. This is a man who has more will to live, right? You also have other characters who are dealing with their own grief, and there's this like undercurrent of who is the one who no longer wants to be here. You're dealing with these ghosts who don't know how to move on because they still have something, that they're clinging on to before the afterlife. I do like that storyline you were kind of mentioning about, if you're an uncle or, I don't know, a stepdad or some sort of this idea of using the grief and pain that you have to help somebody else instead of you just wallowing in it. Yeah. And I like that. The only problem I have with it is that I want Lakeith in more of these leading roles, and that's why y'all cast him. But don't make him a character that he's not. Like, he's got this, I don't want to say the word quirkiness, but he's got this different type of energy to him, and they're like kind of peeling him back to be like the guy who's just trying to make it, the business dude. And I'm like,
you're completely right. Like they cast him as this very like sincere, earnest guy. He's like, he doesn't bullshit people, and he's like very heartfelt. You know, like he sees Rosario Dawson's character is going through a hard time, and just like immediately launches into a heart to heart with her, and it just sort of feels it feels inauthentic to the performer that we've come to know as Lakeith Stanfield. And even through some of the like personal stuff, like seeing him in interviews and stuff, he's kind of offbeat. He's a little bit hard to predict. That's a better one.
Yeah.
And like to cast him as this very like straight edge, run of the mill kind of guy also mutes the things that make him so interesting to watch as a performer.
And that's the best way to put it, because you had mentioned sincere and earnest. You can still have those in the type of character that he's played in the past. Like, to think you need to make him a straight edge dude, you're kind of like losing the point. You don't want him to be typecast, but then you're forming him into something else. I think we could have had that like off-kiltered character who you mentioned, and it would have worked better. I think they would have made better connections than him trying to, I don't know, be in this mainstream type movie. Rosario fits that well. Tiffany does her thing. The addition of Owen Wilson in here definitely made me look at them as a group of characters who would never, ever hang out together. And if you watch Tiffany Haddish and obviously the big cameo in this movie, which is not even a cameo, I would say she's a whole guest side, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
Dude, their interviews are the funniest thing, because obviously she never wants to come off as a Nepo baby. There's this one I got to send you where they ask her, what ghost, you met a lot of celebrities when you were a kid. Who do you wish you could talk to again? And Jamie Lee Curtis is like, I know whatever came through my house. I don't know anybody. And Tiffany,
I'm very normal.
I'm a very normal person. And Tiffany, who knows not how should I say this, keep a story to herself, goes, nah, but you told us during on set how you would have these people who would come over and there was a red carpet that was going up to your set. And the look that this woman gives Tiffany Haddish, Tiffany just goes, I'm sorry, I'm being a snitch. I'll be quiet now. Their whole press run together is funnier than the banter that they have in the film. You have a lot of cameos that happen towards the second half of the movie as well. That again don't help really build up the emotional story, but I guess are still there. Jared Leto as the villain
is in it,
I guess.
Kind of.
Not
even
know.
Really. This is another one of those things that I completely don't understand why a movie would spend their money this way. In that, like, first of all, are people going because Jared Leto's name is attached to it? Second, how do those people feel when his face is completely covered and his voice is even like this weird, ghostly, feels like it's been manipulated in post kind of thing, where it's not even recognizably Jared Leto in any way? So why even bother with celebrity?
Zachy was at Lollapalooza this weekend. I got to see him for a little bit.
Hey.
And as soon as I left, I heard he climbed the scaffolding. So this must be the tamest role he's had as a dead manor owner who was kind of ostracized by his family. I agree with you. What is the point of it? I don't know, but he's there. That's probably where the budget went. Other than that, I guess the best thing I can give this movie is that the effects were kind of decent. They play a lot with the Easter eggs of the ride, and they put them within there, be it certain quotes. Let me move this bucket this way before I start thinking I'm in a haunted mansion. They do the like hallway stretching scene. There's a bit when you're in a chair, and it kind of looks like the chair in the ride, and they kind of take you. They like physically pushed them out. It looked like it was a mixture of practical and CG. It looked cool.
I haven't been on the ride in years and years and years and years.
Oh,
Did you like recognize a lot of elements from it?
Yeah, I felt like such a nerd, dude. From the wallpaper and certain lines that were said. Yeah. Yeah, you could tell they were nerding out with that. But then at the same time, like how is that going to help your movie? Is that really why you guys remade it? To like have a reference to the ride? Again, I think this in 40X would have been kind of decent now that I think about it.
Maybe they'll just show it when you go on the ride in the future.
When you're waiting in the freaking hour and a half line. Yeah, you'll miss the last 30 minutes
That's the
because
runtime, right?
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours is a little too much in my opinion for this film.
Yeah, getting this the week after Barbie, you really feel the bloat, the Disney bloat on this one. Like, why can we get a like hard hitting, hilarious, beautifully designed world in Barbie in 15 fewer minutes than this movie?
And then Chase said it right here. At least Baskin Robbins helped paid out with the budget. It would have been 30 minutes shorter if they cut all of Tiffany Haddish's ads. The Burger King one, the Staples one.
Wait, so I want to talk about this because a lot of people are saying
ads.
like all of this is product. I don't think all of this is product.
I think every single one is product placement, and I think
the
that
one where she says she's going to cancel her Amazon is product placement.
Yes, 100%. Did you not just see what Mattel did? Bro,
Yeah,
you just sat for a Mattel movie where they called their number one action figure a fascist.
Yeah, but that's different. That's a good movie. For a like offhand line, I just don't think that companies are paying out for that. Some of them, yes. I'm not saying that. Like Burger King absolutely paid to be in this movie and make sure that they don't just have tater tots, they also have jalapeno poppers. But I think that like the Zillow line,
Yankee Candle,
is just like them not being very clever and hoping, oh, I recognize that thing, will substitute for a joke.
8 times, Zach.
I'm not saying every single one, but I also don't think every single one was paid for at all.
I have an interview with Tiffany Haddish talking about how she tried to get her Groupon one in there as well, and that's the only one that couldn't make the cut. So I am standing that it is an ad, or it's like, when YouTubers are like, I'm not sponsored, but if they want to sponsor me, sponsor me. It's that in a 2-hour movie. Either way, I could have used without any of them. But that is Haunted Mansion, the newest movie. I kind of have it equal to the original. I caught the original one with Eddie Murphy as well, because I remember kind of liking it. It's fine, dude. It's fine. I can't say you grow up older and like it anymore. You might have some jokes that stand out a little bit more for you. It's at least 90 minutes and not pushing, over 2 hours.
You want to start the Haunted Mansion 2003 redemption campaign here? It's a unheralded classic.
Nah, I'm straight. I'll pick another Eddie Murphy movie, but I would compare the two. I don't know if you like one more than the other, or what you would rate this movie at the end.
I don't remember the Eddie Murphy one well enough to like give you like a very fair comparison, but I remember not really liking it and finding this one. Yeah, I found this one decent. I think if I was the same age I was when I watched the Eddie Murphy one, I'd probably like this one a little more.
Yeah, if you're a kid, you'd enjoy it. But like Zach said, if you're an adult, the story is there, but the depth isn't, because it's cut out by a Yankee Candle ad. But that is Haunted Mansion. If you're curious to catch that, it is like already out of Dolby theaters because it was fighting between TMNT and the Meg. And Beanie Bubble out on Apple TV Plus. Why would people leave when they could see the tense thriller comedy drama that is the Beanie Bubble, the story of the Beanie Babies and how they came to be, and specifically how digital marketing came to be? I thought that was the most fascinating part of this movie. I know this one was getting clowned a lot because you had a lot of like really big actors coming into work in a Beanie Baby movie, but we've had that this whole year between Air, between the ping pong movie, between BlackBerry. There are movies right now that are all about the creation of a company. Some of them, if we're getting into that, are paid by said company, like Frito-Lay's when the Hot Cheetos movie. But then others like this, I don't think they have a connection to the Beanie Baby people.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I don't know
if fun of them.
Beanie Baby has enough financial power to get a movie like this made at this point.
But it is a movie kind of looking at the people who were behind the inception of this crazy kind of rollout that was people being obsessed with Beanie Babies, and more so how they created this item. They were able to personalize it. They had like kind of almost like a fortune cookie thing on its ear. People wanted to collect them. And then with the creation of eBay and more so analytics, I I found that to be the most fascinating part of it, because it wasn't like I could care less about the Beanie Babies. It was more so how they created consumer marketing, how they knew how to keep up with demand. Because if people were buying a certain Beanie Baby, then they knew not to make enough of it, or to make enough to the point that it would keep the supply and demand going. And what happens when you get too greedy that crashes. I think everybody did a decent job in this movie. I like this way more than Tetris. It because again, it's an Apple movie. It has that vibe where it feels like I feel like Tetris never wanted to belittle the creators in any way, shape, or form. Even when the guy was leaving his family, it was like, yeah, but he's leaving them for them. Here, they were okay with making certain individuals look scummy, and I think that kind of helped in telling the story and the demise of it all.
Nice. Did you ever listen to the band OK Go?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that the lead singer is one of the co-directors of this movie, Damien Kulash?
Wait, what?
Yeah, Damien from OK Go co-directed the Beanie Bubble.
Damien, who found a treadmill?
Yeah, that Damien.
Wow. First movie directed by. Oh, he's been an actor in some stuff.
Yeah.
He was in I Love You, Man?
I guess I don't. I feel like OK Go the band
OK
might
Go?
have been in I Love
Might
You.
have been in it.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
but not bad to get Elizabeth Banks and
Not
Zach
bad.
Galifianakis and Geraldine Viswanathan in your first movie.
Yeah. And Geraldine was very good.
Yeah, I heard she's good.
Look,
I heard Zach was good. How's our
Zach's
girl
very
Sarah
good in it.
Snook?
Yeah, so Sarah Snook and Elizabeth Banks almost play like two sides of this guy's kind of like, he treats them like muses, especially because to him, he is a guy who took everybody else's ideas and never really used any of his. He just knew how to like combine everybody and push it forward. But I think Geraldine is definitely the standout. And she's about to have, or continuing to have, a really good year. I think Cat Person's going to get a lot of buzz, even if people don't fall in love with it. There's going to be a lot of arguments for it. That's definitely going to stand out. Do they not put what else is coming up? Because she's got a massive one. It's not even on here.
Sometimes upcoming movies take a minute to get onto.
Yes, because I don't know it right here.
Oh, the Drive Away Dolls movie.
Coen brother.
Yeah,
that,
man.
that seems pretty big.
We've been preaching about her for a couple years now. It feels like, and I think she's about to get that breakout.
Bro, Chase and I remember we did an old commentary track on this movie where the friend gets his dick cut off and they have to take it from the woods back home. Yeah, we've been following her career for a minute though, but for sure, she's about to have, I think, a really big year. I think with this movie, and especially being in a Coen brother movie, it's about to blow up. She's gonna be in a Nolan movie soon. Sure.
Devesh in the live stream is pointing out that the Driveway Dolls, unfortunately, is one of the strike victims that got pushed back. Yeah, I know. I really want to see that one.
And you were just telling me last week Problemista got pushed back as well. You're like, yeah, the posters now just say coming soon. Damn. That sucks, bro.
Okay. Yeah, although all the stuff getting pushed back meant that we are now getting Poor Things at New York Film Festival. So some silver linings, I guess.
I guess. When does that one come out fully?
We don't know now.
Yeah, we'll have to get
December or something.
A whole video for that one as well.
Yeah.
But that is the Beanie Bubble. The next one to cover, we'll cover it quick because it's the last that was in theaters, was the Meg 2. I heard he joins the Meg. You and I have not seen this. I was at Lala. You just knew better than to go see the Meg 2, The Trench. But the only thing I'll comment about this before we move on to the next ones, what the heck? What the heck is Ben Wheatley, British director, right? Essex, yeah.
I mean, this is just like In the Earth, right?
Doing, bro? Like, I remember hunting down a copy of Kill List because this was like the director you needed to watch, and I'm like, all right, let me keep an eye out for it. You know, High Rise comes out, I'm like, all right, this is a little pretentious, but I guess that's what this dude does. I remember A Field in England comes out, and I'm like, bro, this is the trippiest movie. Like, I don't even know what's going on here. I am not old enough to be on the substances, I guess, to watch this movie. The Meg 2? I don't know what's going on here, man. I that one threw me for a loop. I'm trying to give y'all an example of how weird it is for the movies that he was making to then be doing the Meg 2, and I'm like, I don't even know what the best example I could give is to make that jump of I'll tour indie festival movies to this, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's a weird jump.
to me it's In the Earth, because that is a very like restrained, minimalistic type of movie, and to go from something where you really have to
To
lean
this?
in to even understand. Exactly. I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
look, if I have to play devil's advocate here, is this
do it.
not just another version of Greta Gerwig doing Barbie and getting to
No,
level up and
be
work
for
with
real
bigger
now.
budgets?
Stop. That's disrespectful. That's sexist. They're both white, and that's somehow racist. That's not the same. I don't know what this is, bro. Look, like, I don't know why, but Book of Henry comes to mind. And
Mhm.
that's not even that, because that was still him in his weird bag after Trevorrow, after a Jurassic World movie. I don't know what this is. This feels like blackmail to me. This feels like he lost a bet. I haven't even seen the movie, but I can't see any inkling of the director who has made Free Fire and, like you said, In the Earth,
Mhm.
having Jason Statham team up with a shark.
Hey man, $30 million at the domestic box office this weekend.
All right, well, Meg 2, we will be catching it too. It is Shark Week. We do have festivities. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, why not go to the other shark at home, our 2 streaming movies of the week? Untold, Jake Paul, The Problem Child. We needed something to cool down with. After being in all those pits at Lollapalooza, we came home and we're like, why not catch, the pre-fight? He was going to be fighting this Saturday, Nate Diaz of all people. And this is the look back at Jake Paul becoming a boxer. It's a story about storylines. I like, if you followed the brothers, love them or hate them, the one big thing that they push is that they are a brand, right? And as unhealthy as that is, because the story also talks about how they were kind of both abused as kids, and they say that as like a moment for the heartfelt strings to come in. By Daniel freaking Pemberton.
Oh,
He
what?
did the score for this. Yeah, I was waiting for your reaction on that one. There are
Yeah, I had
moments
to
where they
like
will bring up
process it because it felt like the last person we'd mentioned right now.
exactly. They'll say something like, "Yeah, our dad beat us up as kids, and he just doesn't want to admit it." And then Daniel Pemberton will come in with a couple notes, and then
And
they're like,
it's the
"But
sickest
really,
guitar
it's all
riff you've
about
ever
the
heard.
but really, it's all about the storyline." So I drank some Prime, and I went to go fight this next guy. They are a brand. They pretty much tell you that everything that they do is all about creating a narrative to be able to get people to hate you, so that you can sell tickets. And it's like, why? Why would they do this? I don't know why Daniel Pemberton's not on here, but he was right at the end of the documentary
Interesting.
mentioned. So I'll have to pull that up. Look,
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely become better boxers than I would have ever imagined. At least
I
that.
got to give him some respect where respect is due, right? They're
Right.
not that bad. He's not that bad, especially. And just to be able to get all the way up there, to have fought some of the greatest boxers in the world as brothers, he's been going with a lot of UFC people as well. And then just being able to have a Netflix production before your actual fight is kind of insane. They are master marketers in the YouTube era. It has pretty much become just with him breaking out of his mold, with the Rocka Rocka Boys getting maybe a sequel to Talk to Me.
I mean,
Look, I
sounds
think
like
we're in that
it.
new era of what it's like to kind of make it up on your own, love it or hate it. People in the regular industry have done worse things as well. They've started their own damn union. Is also another part that he talks about there, of creating his own union for boxers and creators and such. So, it's not the worst documentary out there, and I will give it this. I felt like they edited it. There is a style to the Untold series, and I think they hijacked it. So I kind of like, as much as I sometimes despise them, I gotta give it to them. They do these goofy edits in this documentary, and it's almost like you just told the Netflix team to sit down and got your YouTube editors to make this. So, hey, the Jake
Hey.
Paul documentary, it is out there. I know it got a bunch of views because I believe it was on trending as well. So
Nice.
there it is.
Would
the
you
last one,
recommend
Zach,
it
I'll
to
let you-
somebody who like doesn't really know anything about the Pauls?
Yeah, I think it's a good recap on the brothers. As biased as it is, it
Mhm.
also is them admitting what they've done, but then having the balls to be like, yeah, but you know what? I play the villain. And it's like, okay, you never learned a lesson, did you? At this point, all of the things that they made apology videos for are just bookmarks and chapters in their lives that helped catapult them to the next big thing.
Right.
Or should I just say the next big mistake that they can then apologize for that catapults them to their next big mistake? So if that aggravates you, steer clear. But if you were kind of interested in, like, I know who these brothers are, let me know a little bit more, it's their perspective on their story. They do need a lot of mental health help, is what I'll say, before they get all the physical help for bopping themselves in the head. But Zach, take it away with this final one that was on Netflix. We had a lot of recommendations for this one, but I've been seeing a split. Some people love this movie. They think this is such an ingenious take on this, I don't even know, meta story is how some people are taking it,
Yeah.
especially when you get into the Jamie Foxx of it all.
Mhm.
Kind of dealing with cloning or worlds within worlds. I kind of saw this as a sorry to bother you type uh, of a story, but I'm curious your take, because some people love it. Some people despise this. They find
Yeah.
this fake. They think it is propaganda almost. Where do you fall on the Netflix movie They Clone Tyrone?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Sorry to Bother You, a movie that I really like and have recommended a lot on the podcast,
Love as
because
well.
I thought about that film, but I also thought about another film that I know you're a big fan of that we recommended on the podcast before, Under the Silver Lake, a lot while watching this movie, because both of
Okay.
those films deal heavily with this sort of idea of regular person getting thrown into like societal conspiratorial rabbit hole, having a whole like
Interesting.
underworld that controls things revealed to them, and having them feel sort of like they're delusional along the path. And those films are all getting at that sort of idea in somewhat different ways. Sorry to Bother You being probably the most satirical and ridiculous and comedic, and to my mind the most fun of them. uh so
Hence
this one
point.
feels maybe a little between Sorry to Bother You and another movie that we actually mentioned earlier on this podcast, Justin Simeon's Hair, in that it's really
Okay.
trying to comment specifically on things that are specific to Black culture and the way that Black people feel about how they've been perhaps manipulated or boxed in by the world around them, and turn it into this kind of like fun sci-fi conspiracy thriller romp. I think it's really, really benefited by having this trio of great performers at the center, between John Boyega, who I think gets to show a different side of himself than normal, one that's a little bit more reserved and more inward, similar to what was the movie that had the title change from Sundance that we liked, that was similar to John Q. Was it like 825 or something like that?
Yeah,
Um,
and then they called it like Broken. It was something with a B after the fact.
Yeah, he's sort of more in that kind of like subdued mode here in They Clone Tyrone, and he lets Jamie Foxx as this like wildly pimp character, and Teyonah Parris, who one of my favorite actresses, underrated actresses,
She's really good.
having a lot of fun in this role as well. So like in the moments where we really get to vibe with all of them, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know if I feel like all the pieces add up in a way that makes me feel like it's making this really profound statement the way that Sorry to Bother You did. I think it's more just like a fun riff on the idea of government control and stuff like that. But I enjoyed my experience with it. I thought it was extremely creative.
I wanted I wanted to like it a little bit more. I
Mhm.
feel like young Art would have watched this movie and been like, bro, there are some aspects to it. I'm looking at this poster right here, and it says, "Beware cheap imitations."
Mhm.
And then the whole movie is shot. You can even see some of it on the poster here. To look like it's shot on film, they do this thing where the circle, the burnt circle, comes out, which is
Yeah,
in film supposed to mean that they're changing the film reel.
yeah, the cigarette burn.
The whole movie's digital.
Yeah,
They
and
they
it
just
doesn't,
threw some they just threw some scratch on there. It looks great. There are some moments where I'm like, ooh, wow, y'all are replicating it, but you can
but
tell
it
it's
also doesn't
replicating
look
it.
like film. Yeah,
It doesn't look like film. It looks like a really good filter,
yeah.
and they have a lot of stylistic choices. Where again, is it being the imitation? Is that the commentary that they are the imitation? I don't hate it, but it had me kind of looking at it like it already knows what the metaphor is.
Hmm.
And instead of doing something bonkers like Sorry to Bother You does, where it takes these twists and turns of really inverting it on its head, here it just like, I felt the inversions or the twists were very heavy handed.
Hmm. Yeah, like it doesn't leave a lot of subtext. It makes it all the text of the movie, which,
Yeah.
can be fun, but it's also less of a thinker and less something where you are left wondering what they mean, because you kind of it kind of is all already there.
Yeah. And again, I want to watch it again. I want to break it down a bit more. But that's how I was left the first time. Like, is there anything else for me to go back to?
Yeah.
I'll put it to you simply. It feels like a Sunday message. This is what they want, and the rap of music is used to go up against you, and you're only at the liquor store for this, and the lottos are fake. It's just to get you in the cycle. And I do agree with a lot of that, but I felt the way it was presented here with the certain characters who reveal it, I don't know. I wanted it to be a bit more. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all I could say.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
took
know.
it as
Like, I don't want to diss it, but
yeah, I mean, I took it as more of like a satirical commentary on that kind of idea, rather than necessarily like just being that idea. That it's like everything that every crazy rumor that you've heard is true. Now what, kind of. Which like is interesting, but again, like there's not necessarily like as much to dive into in that. I think for me,
yeah.
the enjoyment of the movie was just the journey, and not really like the sitting with it as much.
On the
I thought
characters.
it was yeah, it was I thought it was fun. You know, I don't necessarily think that it's like one of these movies that I'm gonna find myself revisiting much, or like thinking back to that much, but I enjoyed actually watching it.
What it reminds me a lot of is, do you remember Gunpowder Milkshake or Milkshake Gunpowder, whatever it was? Another
Yeah.
movie from Netflix that was looking to make like this very colorful cult status type of movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna end up where that movie ended up. like me mentioning it right now is probably the first time people have remembered that movie, if they even remember that movie. I think
Right.
because of the Netflix model and it not getting a release fully, it had like some theatrical showings. I don't know how much it's going to build up to be the cult classic that they want it to be, but I'm curious to revisit in the future. I'm curious to see what this director, obviously the entire team, is going to be doing in the future as well. I just
Yeah.
wanted it to hit a little bit more, and I would recommend something like Sorry to Bother You, or as Zach said, the White Tyrone right here in Under the Silver Lake. So it's out on Netflix. I don't not recommend it,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like really hyped up for this movie, and I thought it was going to be like very very clever. And if it was something like Under the Silver Lake, excuse me, which is a movie that every time we see it, I find something new. Oh, then I would love it. But I feel like it's once you put the puzzle piece together, you put the puzzle piece together. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this one ends up being one that people champion, because I think there are their defenders around it.
for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. But we might talk about it more in the future with spoilers, with such. But let us know
Yeah.
your thoughts
It
on.
definitely also got a bit unlucky coming out on Barbenheimer week. Definitely crowded out a
Yeah,
lot of the noise around the movie.
that does not help when everybody's actually not at home and everyone wants to leave. Yeah, that
Yep.
doesn't help either. But hey, it's a really good looking movie, good performances all around from everybody there. And we'll see where they take it in the future.
Yeah.
They clone Tyrone too. Let's talk about some TV series before we give a shout out to the Intercutie patrons over on Patreon, because we have two maybe recommendations. I know one of these for sure is going to be a recommendation. The other one I think is going to be an event. But let's start with Full Circle, the TV
do
miniseries
it.
from the one and only Steven Soderbergh, who had two things come out. I don't know if you got to
Yeah.
see the other one that you had mentioned to me, but
Not yet.
yes, this man came out with two things in the matter of one weekend.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up the other one right now, but explain the other one.
What, Command Z?
Yeah, from
Um,
Steven Soderbergh.
I mean, Command Z, I still haven't watched, so I don't know as much about, but he's selling that one through his website, which is kind of interesting.
That's raw.
It's also with Michael Cera, Roy Wood Jr., some funny people like that. So I'm curious about Command Z. I finally did take the plunge and buy it, so I'm gonna try and work through it this week, and I'll let you know. But Full
All right.
Circle is a lot more readily available. That one is over on Max. You were letting me know it is based on a book that it was adapted from, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of sense because there is so much information. There's so many details to the different characters here. It is an extremely convoluted sort of heist thriller of sorts involving a botched kidnapping and all sorts of secrets being revealed over the course of its 6 episodes. And I mean, I think to me, the thing that I was most impressed by is that detail, that level of depth to the different characters, to the different twists and turns that it takes. It is a perhaps intimidating amount of detail. I don't know if you're anything like me, but after the second episode, I kind of stopped for a second and just had to think, like, what happened? Do I even understand what even happened just now? Did you find you were getting what was happening as you were watching this, or did you need to stick
Oh,
through it to the end?
we got it right at the ending of the first episode to the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the second. I knew exactly where it was going. And because of that, there's a certain character that when you're watching them, I realized, yo, they are cooking with fire here. This man got an incredible ensemble who
Yeah.
is performing while they're performing. The way some of these people lie to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's some people who are casting this where I knew that they weren't just being cast to be that character. I knew that there was more to some of these characters than meets the eye. So right from the beginning, we were watching certain people in a certain way, and it just like it makes it worth the rewatch if you don't get it until the end. But if you
Yeah.
get it early on, oh my goodness. Because
No, exactly.
by the time you get towards the end, there's like these big reveals on certain characters, and oh, it just comes in full circle.
Yeah, exactly. If you're watching this show, wondering why is Claire Danes got like such an insignificant role in these first couple of episodes, don't worry, she will get her moment. Lots of really amazing actors here.
Sazi
I,
Beats killed it.
Zazie Beetz, great. Timothy Oliphant, is it? Or am I
Oh
mixing him up?
yes,
Yeah,
he looked exasperated the entire
yeah,
run. This man
yeah.
was out of breath that all through all of it.
But also a lot of the more minor roles here. The actors, who particularly the Grenadian actors, who I was less familiar with, like Adia and Gerald Jones and Shay Cole, I thought were all also very excellent here. Um, so we haven't talked much specificity about what this show is. I mentioned that there's a botched kidnapping, but it ends up being this thing that sort of spills out and affects lots of different people, from this sort of like crime ring to this like Manhattan elite family, to some police investigators and some Grenadian immigrants. And to me, one of the things that the show reminded me of, not so much specifically these movies, but you remember in like the mid 2000s, there was a whole like era of like movies like Crash and Babel, where there'd be these interconnected ensembles where like you see all the characters and you have no idea how they could
Love
all
those
cross
movies.
paths, and then they find ways to like make their characters intertwined in a way that just feels like perfect and unexpected. And to me, this show had so many of those moments that were so exciting.
Agree. I am a huge fan of those movies. Like it's almost like a mini anthology through everybody there, and especially
Mm-hmm.
with something like this, where you have people who cross paths without ever even seeing each other. It'll be something that they were working on. Like people will be working on some property stuff, and while may have never met that person, the the work that they were doing was affecting other people.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned, the big sequence that happens at the beginning is this revenge plot that is happening because it's an eye for an eye, a child for a child, and right in the middle of one of the busiest parks in New York, Washington, right
Washington
outside of
Square. Yeah.
NYU, they're doing this whole ritual to like sacrifice that person to make it come full circle. So
Mm-hmm.
the way that develops and the way that you see who's intertwined with each other, I thought was genius. It's like it's one of those where you think someone is puppeteering and then you realize someone's puppeteering the puppeteer and who's puppeteering that puppeteer. I
Yeah.
love those types of stories. And as you were mentioning with the cast, the younger ones obviously do a fantastic job. Gerald Jerome's always incredible. I love
Yeah.
this. Almost he's trying to be bigger than he really is, which is fantastic after coming out of a Prime show where he is bigger than everybody else. Just the way he's able to be really in tune to his character was really great. But right here, Faldut Sharma.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, man. Everybody else is fantastic. Everybody else can win awards. This is my man right here. This man had these scenes in the show where we were rewinding it and we're like, right there, that was the quote. That
Mm-hmm.
like he was saying quotes in this show on HBO that felt like an iconic Wire quote.
Right.
He had this one bit about America. He's like, oh, so you don't want to be in America then? He had like these tests that he was doing with the young kids. The young kids had a lot to
Hmm.
work with because he was the one steering them. There's this one
Yeah.
bit where he comes in, he goes, is this the new plan? He goes, no, this was always the plan. Oh, he ate this up. There's a moment where he realizes that someone isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's just
Hmm.
this little like, yeah, so we're going to. Yes, we're gonna, and I just, oh, there's so much detail to this man's performance. He was easily the standout to me in a show that is just crowded with people, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you had anybody else. I know we were making the joke about the hot pocket, but even he did a fantastic job. Jim
Yeah.
Gaffigan coming in as like the higher up to Zazie Beetz' character, as she's just trying to solve the case, but they won't really let her. Yeah, you mentioned Timothy Oliphant was great.
Yeah. Well, so
CCH
just
Pounder
speaking,
as well as like the leader
yeah.
of the Guyanan.
I mean, that's the thing is like because you have this amazing ensemble and so many different characters, and they're also rich and lived in. Like I love the little layers that they give to the show. It's not just that Zazie Beetz is trying to convince Jim Gaffigan's character, who's her kind of her boss, to like go ahead with her investigation, but they have this sort of like passive aggressive relationship where she's like not just telling him that's what she should do, but that he's kind of an asshole. And
Yeah,
like that, that these Guyanan characters have their relationships as well, and that there's a moment where one of them says to somebody else like, we're not much older than you, and it's like this thing where it puts their experience into a different context that makes you think about it even more deeply. And I love a show that's as rewarding as that like right up until the very end of the episode is giving you like new layers to these characters, to these relationships. And um I can see some people bouncing off the impenetrability of a show like this, but I think it is so rewarding. It's one of my favorite shows of the year so far, because it's just like
well,
got that edge to it, that like excitement, thrilling aspect that the best films or shows like this do. And a lot of that is really in the way that Soderbergh portrays this. It's got a lot of his signatures. The handheld camera that's really like uptight to the actors and following them from room to room. He just has this ability where he'll hang just behind somebody's shoulders in a way where you like know something's about to happen to them. I thought it was shot brilliantly.
yeah. No, he always does a fantastic job, and he just always finds a way to put cameras where they shouldn't be. Like
Hmm.
I'll take what you were saying, and those sequences in the van when they actually start doing the kidnapping, it's like it makes it feel so claustrophobic, and like
Yeah.
nobody knows what they're doing either. Just brilliant tension overall. But yeah, I found out there was a book for this. I was at a bookstore and I saw it there as like the recommended for what's going to be coming out, and all the little excerpts said from the book dealer guy person was, I don't know where this is coming out or who's working on it, but no matter how good the adaptation is, it's not going to come close to the book. So I am ready to read this book to go more in depth into it, because that's my only thing with it. I really liked it, but part of me wonders, am I going to read the book and go like, nah, this didn't even touch the surface? I don't know
Hmm.
if it's going to be one of those. So I would highly, highly recommend this show, and I'm looking forward to also highly recommending the book as well.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, shout out to everybody
Definite
on the
recommendation
show.
for me too.
Yeah, very well put. And Zach will let us know how Command Z is, because this man has three things out in 1 year, if I'm not mistaken. It is Command Z, this, and he did what's it
Magic
called?
Mike earlier this
Magic
year.
Mike. Yeah,
Yeah,
just a feature film, one for them, one for me, one for theaters, one for
casual.
everything. And then what he's producing as well. We're not even counting that stuff
Yeah.
either. But like that's crazy, dude. Nobody works. Do you remember when he was making like 2 movies a year at one point?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
especially when you shoot on iPhones, it
oh
makes it
my
that much easier, I
gosh.
guess.
Like
But
this is
he
three
knows how to do
projects.
it.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, that's crazy. He's on that Woody Allen run. He goes, if he's not doing it, then I'm gonna come in. So
Right.
Steven Soderbergh, shout out the man. But to wrap up another HBO series that Zach finally had the privilege to finish, The Idol, the long talked about show of the summer. Zach, I've said my piece. Let me know what you thought about all of the cards folding in together for the finale of The Idol season one.
Uh, All right. Well, I'm curious to hear some more of your thoughts on it now that we can talk a little bit in more detail, and I'll throw up a idle spoilers tag for us, even though I don't think we need to necessarily get too specific in talking about the way the show wrapped up. But you know, I think the thing about the finale specifically, episode 5 specifically, is that it both exemplified some of the things that are most exciting about the show and some of the things that I liked about the show the most, and some of its absolute most dreadful, least thought through, most poorly executed aspects. Because, like, by that point, you're finally fully aware, like, okay, they are doing the whole, like, sexual cat and mouse thing. This is, Fatal Attraction. This is Duke of Burgundy. This is whatever you want to call it. They're just not doing it compellingly or convincingly at all. There's the turn that happens basically towards the end of episode 4 into episode 5, where you're supposed to sense the power dynamic shift, and it feels like they happen for no other reason than the forces behind the show deciding, okay, now it has to be like this. It doesn't feel like an evolution. It doesn't feel consequential to a certain thing. It just sort of flips, and the weekend shifts into like bumbling sweaty mode. And I don't know, I mean, like, I dig a collection of really talented people like Moses Sumney and Susanna Sun sitting around in a house as this sort of like uh cultish musical family. Like, those aspects of the show are pretty exciting, and there's a lot of really beautiful cinematography towards that end. I loved some of those shots that did slow zooms into Lily Rose Depp by the pool. I just found it to be kind of phony and
Mhm.
kind of like unconvincing completely. And I was willing to maybe feel like, all right, whatever. It was a bumpy landing, but I didn't mind where they ultimately landed the plane. And then they add a whole coda that just was nonsense. Like, I get that you were able to film at the Weeknd's concert, and that's a pretty cool venue and scenario to have as a backdrop. But holy shit, that needed a rewrite. I really thought that last little bit of the show completely ruined any journey that they thought they took us on. At least for me personally. Did you also have that reaction to at least the end bit of it, or were you more thrown off by the entire last episode?
So I see the show as trashy. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of the show. I think some people have come into it as a drama. Some people have come into it not expecting the comedy. I think it's supposed to be a joke. I think the whole bit of it is satire. I think when Simons was doing it, it was called a satire, presented as a satire. And then
Yeah.
the moment that the boys took over, it was said to have become the thing it was satirizing. I think it's still a satire. Maybe
Yeah.
not as poignant, maybe not as sharp as it could have been the other way around. But I guess my question to you would be, the cinematography is there. The
Mhm.
acting all around except Abel's is there. Do
Sure.
you think that the issue is the delivery, or is the issue the story?
I think the issue is the delivery, because I think there could be a story there that is interesting. Like, I liked the stuff about um the hyper focus of this team of people in crafting this person's career, and there's even elements of um her management tolerating certain aspects of the Tedros character's behavior as long as they're in service of
Of
her
her.
music. Right? I think
Yeah.
that's all interesting stuff that you could do. I just don't think they executed it in a particularly interesting way, in a particularly compelling way. Like, a lot of that stuff, and like, that could have been more subtextual, became text, and it just sort of services these extremely cringy, like, faux sensationalistic, like, BDSM music production scenes that are like, 50 Shades of Gray
Which he
levels
worked
of
on.
like I guess makes sense, right? 50 Shades of Grey level like titillation, not exactly, you know, like super scandalous stuff. It's more just I don't know. Again, I go back to the idea that this is a very like, I think the things that they're doing to try and portray it as some kind of edgy show are very like tame in a certain way. It's like, yeah, you don't typically see stuff like this on TV, but it's not like challenging, it's not upsetting, it's just kind of like porn. And it's like, yeah, we're showing this stuff, isn't that subversive? But I think it's not subversive in terms in service of a greater goal. And maybe if there is more of that like power play aspect to it in terms of like the balance shifting back and forth, maybe it becomes more fun, more cat and mouse. It just wasn't really there for me. I think like it was a show that just really lacked juice in the end.
I'm wondering if because the Weeknd supposedly wrote the original draft of whatever was supposed to be with Simons. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's a joke that either way, whoever did it was going to have the same punchline, which was that rug pull in the last episode.
Yeah.
If Simons would have done it, do you think people would have liked the story more if she delivered it the way she was going to deliver it, as opposed to the big reveal coming from the way, like you said, where it's not really cookie crumbs on the way there. It's more so like you're just stopping to have sex along the way until you
Yeah.
get there. Because it is a whole story about seduction.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of it, it became, is the story of seduction coming from a dude, or is the story of seduction coming from a more, what would have been an extra episode storytelling
Yeah.
from the mind of Amy Simons? And with 80%, which still boggles my mind, 80% of it being shot already, can
Right.
they still release a version of that? I would love to see her take on it.
Yeah, I'd be really curious. I mean, I don't like to blind speculate on things I haven't seen. It's not like I know Amy Simons well enough to be like, well, this is 100% how her take would be. I also think it's a little like gender essentialist to be like, well, the woman story would have been better represented by a woman showrunner. Like it still has a lot of the same
Well, in
creative
this case, though.
forces behind it.
In this case, though.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not like
But
saying
I
it's
agree with you too.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying it's like an impossibility. I'm just not saying like Amy Simons would have cured the show. Like it still has a lot of the same elements as we know. So like maybe not.
Exactly.
Maybe her version would have been bad too. I don't know. I think that it was. I think it there is some sort of misconception or misjudgment along the way.
Yeah, because a lot of people feel like her version was what was taken away, and this is like the trashed down version of it, even though we've never seen hers.
Right.
Um, I like the core story of this idea, like you were mentioning, of this is the pop star who's being used by her team and trying to siphon out whatever. Even when there was this big issue with her mother, they still tried to make that part of her creative process.
Yeah.
Then the moment Tedros comes in, he's using it the same way too, because as what's told to Tedros, you are an untalented man who knows how to get all this talent around you. This is a story
Hmm.
we've seen in Oppenheimer when you and I discussed it last week, that it's purposely shown that he can't ever solve the equations, but he can direct everybody around him to do it. We had just mentioned it with an earlier movie as well, this idea that they are not the ones who are creating something. Oh, the Beanie Bubble. But they can get everybody around him to do it. And that's how they talked about this character of Tedros. A man with absolutely zero talent, but who can direct all the people around him. And
Hmm.
there may be this push and pull, as you still have the spoilers thing out there, where the person being used and then being used by the other people who think that they're using Tedros as well, ends up becoming this whole full circle thing of like who's really the person controlling who. And I think that's a really cool story. Even if it was delivered in the trashiest way possible, I think
Hmm.
it was rushed at the end, because there's a time jump that happens in
Yeah.
that final episode where you're like, why? Why is there a time jump? I need to see the fallout, right? Like if you're showing me all these little climaxes, where is that fallout? I think that there is a really interesting story there, and I think that all of the people who they had involved, I saw Divine Joy Randolph be mentioned in the chat as well, who has a lot of great movies on the horizon. I think that they are a pivotal part of this series, and when you realize what she plays into the show, she is a big part of the twist at the end. So I think she has the biggest Easter eggs when she's spying that kind of leads you to what that ending is going to be. There's
Yeah.
the opening shot, There is them watching Basic Instinct. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that makes the story intriguing. And I think seeing the stuff that might have been cut out from the Amy Simons documentary could have added a lot more psychological aspects to the character, to one of the main characters in the show. So I think that's the only thing that's missing. It reminds me of like when you get these different cuts from people. I know Snyder Cut's going to be like the biggest one that people can like reference, and where you're seeing someone's different take on it,
Yeah.
and you're almost
Or like the
getting,
Blade
like,
Runner director's cut.
that too, yeah. Or you can even get into like I don't know, a lot of Marvel versions of movies where it's like, oh, you got this version of it, but it was written by somebody else, or I don't know. I feel like we got an incomplete story, but they were still kind of they cut out a scene, but still kind of left the repercussions of that scene that as an audience we did not see. So,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a show that was maybe a little more like cobbled together than like smoothly
made last minute.
assembled. Yeah, I mean, like even the scene that The Weeknd tweeted out when that whole Rolling Stone fiasco happened
right?
wasn't in the final cut of the show. Like Dan Levy's character, who was part of like the announcements and stuff, does he show up again after that first episode or first two episodes?
I don't remember him showing up at all like that. And again, you know, with Rachel Sennett being on the show, with what's her name, who was in Red Rocket being on the show
Susanna
as well.
Sun.
You had a lot of
Yep.
you had a lot of these push and pulls of like, oh, they were in the original cut, and now they're gonna walk out of this one, and then they didn't walk out of this one, and then they toured with The Weeknd for like the music of the show as well. I will ask you this one because there's that blurred line of death of the author, and then when you want the author to just die. Do you see it being a team with The Weeknd and with Sam Levitz? And more so, I'm curious about The Weeknd because I know how people feel about Sam. Where an artist is going to sing these songs that are very edgy, that it's a blame on the artist, and it's not just the character they're creating.
What do you mean? Like if he's
Marriage
producing
Story
material that is like misogynistic, does that make The Weeknd misogynistic? Is sort of what you're saying?
But right there's already putting a word, right? I would say in Marriage Story that it is a man who had a very public divorce, and in having that very public divorce, he made a movie where he cast two people to, you know, kind of portray his divorce with Jennifer Jason Leigh. Do you see this?
I don't like to I don't like to hyper criticize creators of material for wanting to engage with potentially hot button issues or things that skirt the line of appropriateness. I don't want to like hyper criticize that, because I think I think those are really interesting things, and I think we want our filmmakers to be able to reflect society and comment on society in order to get like great art. I just think it also sometimes will reveal their own blind spots and reveal their own prejudices or maybe, you know, lack of education in certain areas. So like you set yourself up for making I don't know, insufficient art, I guess, in some ways, but it's not like I don't want them to be doing it or think they shouldn't be. And I don't have a problem with like The Weeknd trying to make a show about all these things. I just think he kind of was bad at it.
For sure. I think when you're talking about someone like Sam, who took the experiences of the people around him to make Euphoria successful,
right,
and then kind of pretended to vent through what was it,
Malcolm and Marie?
Malcolm and Marie. Do you have The Weeknd here, as a lot of people have alluded to, as being the rock star who was used, and that he almost came under the gaze of a pop star? And as we all know, he made a whole EP, fantastic EP by the way, after a breakup with a very big pop star. And just like Sam takes instances in his life and turns it into art, is The Weeknd maybe taking instances in his life and turning it into art? I don't know, a diss? Is it something that he is allowed to do as a creative, or is there and again, this is like a boring conversation to have, but is there I don't know, a responsibility to keep that on his own? Should it be more embellished, is what I'm saying, than him playing himself?
I think that's an interesting conversation. I don't think that's a boring topic. I think, you know, I think what the answer is like Well, that's more interest. It might be more interesting to him than it is to us. Maybe his responsibility is just to open it up in a way where it's not just you venting like it feels like in Malcolm Marie. It feels like something
Yeah.
that has a little bit more like actual substance and commentary that's relatable to the bigger world. And I don't think I think sometimes artists, things happen to them that they find interesting, and they don't necessarily realize the best ways to translate that to everybody's experience. And I wonder if maybe
That's a good
there's
point.
some of that here, in that, like, yeah, this might feel really right to the Weeknd, who is immersed in the music industry, but to the rest of us, it just sort of feels like your perspective.
It doesn't feel like real life. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. That is The Idol out on HBO Max. Season 2 coming soon, Zach?
Do you want a season 2 at this point? I mean,
what's the point of a season 2? I just want the Simon
Yeah.
Show. I just want to see the different ways it was told. That's it.
see, here's the thing. I actually could get talked into a season 2 without the Weeknd, and I'm not just saying that because like I didn't particularly like his acting on it. I just felt like they came to the end of his character before they decided to do a weird left-hand turn at the end.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's more so this idea that he felt like he was used in some personal instance in his life, and then made a show where he forgot to give us all the other details
Yeah.
in that translation of how he felt slighted at a certain point. Because to him, this is the what if scenario in his life if he would have, I don't know, been used. And I'm going to give you my pitch right here since we're in full spoilers. I don't even think it was Selena. I think it was Drake. I think Drake would have pop starred him, and he would have been under Drake, and he would have been Tedros by him. There was this bit, I don't know if you heard, one of my favorite parts behind the scenes. Since this was all filmed under him, obviously the Simons thing got deleted, and they came in and they filmed in his house. He does all the music. He is the one starring. They saved a lot of money because they were able to obviously do his concert and everything.
Yeah.
All the wardrobe is his. All the wardrobe are clothes that were given to him that he keeps in a closet that he would never wear, and was told, create this character, this persona that would never be you. So everything that he gets made fun of, the rat tail, the ugly clothes, is the Weeknd wearing what everybody wanted to gift him and the person that they wanted him to become, and he just embodied it in the show. So maybe that's a more interesting behind the scenes bit than having to actually see this disgusting person with his rat tail drinking shots.
I'm more interested in whatever that the Weeknd Drake show is. Maybe if a more homoerotic version of this show would have been more interesting.
Maybe, right? Because think about it, right? Drake wanted him under OVO after Take Care. That didn't fall through because the Weeknd said, I'm not going to become Party Next Door and you're just going to siphon ideas out of me. And look at where Party Next Door is and look at where the Weeknd is. Making terrible performances on HBO. Do you remember him playing himself in Uncut Gems?
I do. Yeah.
That was good?
Yeah, it's a cameo
Slimy?
role. It's maybe the best place for him to be.
I see. Well, that is The Idol out on HBO.
Yeah.
HBO Max? I don't know which one it was, but
HBO.
That is the
proper.
The recap
Hey,
to
look,
the series.
Abel still got a collaboration with our boy Trey Edward Schultz in the works. Are you excited for that one?
100%. And I don't want y'all coming back and saying that Aubrey's such a good actor in that one. He wasn't great, but I don't think it was the worst part of that show. I think there was a good cast in there. I think it had an interesting story, and I'm curious to see how it holds up in the future since HBO put all their marbles on there, and that was their big show of the summer that they were reaching out to. But before we talk about the big shows of the end of summer on this final month of August as we begin it, give a big shout out, Zach, to the Intercutie members over on our Patreon page.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's thank those wonderful Intercuties, the people who do so much to support what we do and help keep the show going. Our patrons are in the Academy: Tushar, Cademan, Connor, Josh, May, Ricky, Janicia, Tyler, and Benji. I think I missed Joe. Did I say Joe? Well, I'm saying it a few times now, Joe. And then, of course,
Joe.
The producer level patrons. They are Yuden Veer, Sam, and Wiley. An absolutely gigantic thanks to all of them and all of our patrons who are supporting us for as little as $1 a month on
Appreciate you.
patreon.com/intercutpod. And for that contribution, you can get access to some early cuts of the Intercut episodes, early looks at some of our episode outlines and the different brackets that we do. We're talking about making a DC films bracket in celebration of the release of Blue Beetle, so be sure to be on the lookout for that one as well. We got a private channel on the Intercut Discord where you can talk to us throughout the week. Make sure you find a link to that Discord in the description of this episode, and an invitation to our monthly patron Google meetings, the latest of which we have not scheduled, but we still haven't done our August one. Maybe we get into it next week or the week after. I don't know what your schedule is looking like, Art, but should probably figure that one out.
Next week, so tentative for next week, next Monday,
the 14th.
Yeah, and besides the DC one, because none of us would have seen Blue Beetle by then. Do you even have a screener for Blue Beetle?
They haven't emailed me yet one, but they usually do, so maybe I'll get it.
Bro. You're an honorary Mexican. They should be reaching out to you as well, and me, and nothing. Warner Bros. Just leaving us out in the dust. But
nothing.
Besides that one, I do want to do that Nolan bracket. We are working on, maybe still working on one because it's Nolan movies. They live for long. Either way, we should still do it with the Intercuties. I think that would be a fun thing to do. So if you sign up before next week, you will be a part of that Intercut, what do we call it, hangout Patreon live stream thing that we do. And for sure, besides the DC one, I think it would be interesting to get everyone's vote on the Nolan bracket, because I think that's enough movies. DC may be a lot. I know people may have not seen them all. They have jumped off of it. People may not even care.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking about our favorite Nolan movies last week, and it was just like there was like 6 number ones.
Well, that's the thing. Is Christopher Nolan,
that's a good one.
He's both not super prolific. Like, he's only made, I want to say, 12 features, maybe 13.
What prolific mean to you?
Prolific just in making lots of stuff.
Like a Ridley Scott, who would
like
have...
a Soderbergh.
Soderbergh, yeah. Well, Soderbergh, crazy.
Yeah. But he's both not super prolific, and when he does actually make a film, it is a genuinely big deal. Like, I feel like even casual audiences have probably seen like 8 to 10 of his movies. So exactly, I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of opinions on the Nolan bracket. That's going to be a fun one to do. We just got to figure out what takes up those other slots. Do we have to include Man of Steel on there to get to 16?
Mm-hmm. How many does he have total?
I got him at, if we're counting the shorts, I think I got him at 14 right now. 15.
That's good.
So we got to get 14. So we got to get 2 more things on there.
We'll throw that YouTube video of him explaining Memento. That one's pretty good.
There we go. I love it.
But we never done a Nolan bracket, have we?
No, not yet. And Nolan is both of our one of our favorite filmmakers, so it'll be a good episode. If
anything, we may have to do one for the Intercuties, and then for next time when we get the full 16 is when we might have to do it, but we'll see.
Oh, you know what? I should also quickly shout out. We have been doing for the latest brackets polls, not only on our Instagram stories, but on our Twitter polls as well. So if you have been enjoying the brackets, make sure you're following along on social media. And we've been, testing what the Intercuties liked. I think for our A24 poll, it ended up being Lady Bird versus Everything Everywhere All at Once in the Instagram poll finals, where Everything Everywhere All at Once took it. And then what was the finals in our movie star bracket? Actors 50 and over, was it Viola Davis and Kate Blanchett and Tom Cruise? Kate Blanchett took it over our winner, Tom Cruise. So Intercuties not always lining up with our opinions there, but a lot of interesting stuff.
Unbelievable.
I still haven't done the next round of the A24 Twitter poll, so I'll probably put that up tomorrow morning. Make sure you're following us on @IntercutPod on Twitter and get some of your votes in, and maybe we'll show some of the completed brackets on a future weekend must watch.
Beautiful. I like that. All right, well, let's talk about what y'all should have on the horizon for movies that are coming out. Starting off, before our picks for the week, Oppenheimer has been extended. Woo! Everybody cheering. It's fantastic. They moved Gran Turismo, which, if I just shout that one out really quick here, there's going to be a based on a true story early access show that is this day.
Yeah,
today.
tonight.
Only in IMAX. So if you have an IMAX around you, you can go watch it. But it is excluded from A-list. Boo! It's okay. You can watch it tomorrow with the Gran Turismo based on a true story early access show PlayStation Plus event. Only in Dolby.
I mean, I love Dolby.
I love IMAX. I ain't catching either. Or am I catching it this week because it got pushed all the way until the 25th,
August 25th.
meaning that we can go back to Oppenheimer, which is out for another week. Shout out to that. That means that if you have not had the opportunity to see it in IMAX, we've talked about it. We have a whole Intercut after credits. I have a whole LME discussing the different various formats. Do yourself a favor. Go catch it. I believe it is out of Dolby, but is now able to get another week in IMAX, be it digital, be it the 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. Catch it if you cared for the movie. If you didn't care for the movie, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think 3 hours in an IMAX theater is going to change it for you. But if you did, it is worth it. I've had people reach out to me, go like, yo, I've seen it like 2-3 times, but I haven't caught the IMAX. Should I make it out? I'm like, you've already sat for 9 hours of your life. What is another Oppenheimer trip to go see it in the format that
Exactly.
the filmmaker intended it to? So I would highly recommend that. I think that's really cool that it's out again.
They added more screenings of the 70 millimeter IMAX to the Lincoln Square Theater as well. They kicked Blue Beetle out of that screen, so it's more and more Oppenheimer. But check this out, man.
Blue Beetle doesn't need to be there.
They got screenings running through Wednesday, August 30th already, and the 6:30 for that one is still. I don't know if I can get it in focus here, but almost all the way full up already. Like if you didn't grab your tickets to a 6:30 showing already, I don't know if you're gonna get one. Look at this. This is just like the front 2 rows.
Sheesh. You're gonna have to bring your own chair at that point.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. But hey, that's awesome. I love seeing that Oppenheimer back in full swing. Now the only thing that we need is more of these IMAX movies, dude. I'm gonna pitch you an idea. Because we got the IMAX coming full swing, but we don't have enough of these films. When I was at the festival, I thought about this. Do you remember the Billie Eilish doc that was shot in IMAX? And it was like fantastic. Just it was during COVID. You and I didn't get the chance to go see it in IMAX. Bro, I think there should be a movie that follows like music film fest people for like each of the days. And it's like this intertwining story. I think the whole thing should be shot in IMAX. It should be shot during the music festival. Look, so I'm just spitballing out here.
You're saying like you want like one of those Formula One Drive to Survive or like NFL Hard Knock shows, but for artists at a music festival, but for Lala.
But like for the people going at the festival.
For the people going.
You're following characters that intertwine and come across during the days.
Yeah.
But the like whole push for it to be on IMAX is that you're shooting the festival on IMAX. You are there in the crowd because nothing imitates being in the middle of a crowd when an artist is going.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have that anamorphic, bro. You need that full IMAX. Look, I'm pitching some ideas because the IMAX slate is going to be cleared out. We really don't have anything until Dune. No one cares to see Blue Beetle in IMAX. Just like no one cares for the Marvels in IMAX, which is why they're booting that for Dune. Mm-hmm. We need these movies that are like meant for that, and I think there are not enough people who are pitching ideas for IMAX movies. So that's mine: a music festival movie shot in IMAX to make you feel like you're there in the music festival. Please don't steal it. But Oppenheimer, in the meantime, is playing in IMAX. And I think it does the job at fulfilling those screen experiences. Because other than that, the big movie of this week it's caught in the crossfires. The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Zach was really excited for this one. I keep saying Dementor too. Oh, they want me to log in to get this one here. But this is a film that is getting no Dolby. It's getting no IMAX. It is the new movie of the week and is getting left out to get like regular theaters.
I was going to ask, are you planning on seeing this one? Because I'm honestly on the fence, but if we got to report back for Weekend Must Watch next week, I'll do it.
It's the only big movie. It's shot on Sony Venice, so it had the ability to go big if they wanted to. I will be doing a whole day of The Last Voyage of Demeter, a movie where the embargo is the day it releases, Zach.
Mm-hmm. The press screening is The press screening is less than 24 hours before the first public screenings. This is one of
The
those
press
like
screening is a midnight showing.
yeah. I will say this does look like one of those classic that guy movies. It's got so many that guys in it, like Corey
Yeah.
Hawkins,
Corey
Liam
Hawkins is good.
Cunningham
We saw
from
him
Game of
live.
Thrones, David Dastmalchian. Yeah, we saw Corey Hawkins on Broadway.
Fantastic. Got nominated, should have won. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Who you just said
Liam
Dastmalchian. I don't
Cunningham,
see him
David
on here.
Dastmalchian. Yeah.
Oh, there he is, David Dastmalchian. Like all of these really good actors, really great character actors, and it seems
Yeah.
like they're going for the thing where you don't know who the vampire is on the boat. Like sometimes they save this movie and the reactions so late because they want to see how the spoilers not being leaked would help the box office. Sometimes they're hiding it because it's going to be crap. We'll see how this goes. The director has done some interesting movies. I like The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I thought that was a pretty good one. Troll
okay.
Hunter should still be on Netflix. It's not a bad track record for the guy.
Yeah.
Good
Caitlin
cast.
likes Autopsy of Jane Doe.
It's a really good movie. It's underrated. So we'll see. Again, and then that's another movie where it's all kind of a bottle film within the morgue.
Yeah.
Here you're on the ship. We'll see how it goes. I have a day of this, The Meg. I'm probably gonna watch Sound of Freedom, and there's a third one that I need to catch as well that I'm missing. So I have not caught it yet. I've been away, but I will be catching this. So yeah, put it on your radar, Zach, so we can talk about it next week. 'Cause it's gonna be slim pickings next week.
Hey, they got Nightingale from The Nightingale in this.
What you mean? She's in it?
Ailing Franciosi or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah,
Whoa.
they got your girl Nightingale.
I didn't see the bird right in front of her face. That's usually how I know that it's her.
That's how I recognize her.
That's the big release of this week. The other kind of limited ones would be Passages, which came out at Sundance. We gave it a little bit of a shout out. It's been getting a nice little release. I think really great performances following a dude who's in several relationships who just continues to find himself in worse scenarios over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's played by the boy Franz. Fantastic job.
Yeah, two things on this movie.
Tell me.
Absolute perfect movie for those people who are like, I love mess. Like this is just like a messy throuple romantic intertwining relationships movie. And as you mentioned, absolutely amazing performances, not just Franz, but Adele and Ben Whishaw. All really, really good. Like this is like a for sure going to be a lock for some like Critics Awards, Gotham Festival Awards, stuff like that. But second point, I want to say there's that annoying discourse that keeps popping up on Twitter every 3 months about like are there too many sex scenes? Are there not enough sex scenes? Are sex scenes necessary? You watch a movie like this and you realize that sex scenes not only are necessary for some stories, but like just so important to how they're told. I mean, people really get it in this movie, and it's crucial to your experience of it.
I would agree. Just like The Idol, right, Zach? King Cole is also out in theaters from Sundance, a documentary / experimental look at this one town in Appalachia where they worship Cole. They come out and they kiss it. They have festivals around it. They have annual festivities. Like everything revolves around Cole. And I thought it was an interesting take on the movie. I'm curious to revisit it. We got to see it virtually. I believe it's getting a little bit of a limited release before it comes out. And I would say, especially when it's out streaming in some sort, give it a watch because it's an interesting take on this movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to show some of the screens that it's playing on. Because it's like a slow rollout movie, so it's not going to be in a lot of theaters, but it's a really fascinating film for sure. So it's one to keep on your radar. I think both of us were just sort of like, we both got like just sort of swept up in the lyrical, almost like dreamlike nature of the movie. It's one of those documentaries
being up for 12 hours.
Yeah.
You and I just loved doing these slow, really beautiful looking movies at 12:30 in the morning. Right, we're sleep deprived. We got to get up at 9, and we're like King Cole.
Perfect. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. So I'm excited to catch it again. They sent us the link to it. So.
Josh says it comes on our movie soon, so that is exactly where I would recommend it. If some of you may go see
I think
this in
he
the
was
theater
saying that
like,
about Passages, by the way.
Oh, Passages. Okay, well, Passages would also... I would recommend Passages in an art house theater before I would recommend King Cole. But I would recommend King Cole. Maybe watch it at home because I know how people can be iffy on documentaries. But I thought it was an interesting way of approaching it.
Yeah.
And then the last one that I want to give a recommendation to, I have this on my radar, Medusa Deluxe. I don't know if you remember the movie In Fabric by Peter
Yeah.
Strickland, if I'm not mistaken. I really had that one hyped up. Didn't love that one as much. This feels like it's giving me the vibes of that movie, but instead of a tailor, I think she was someone who works on costumes, on outfits. This is a hairstylist, so it kind of has that bad hair vibe where something may or may not go wrong. It talks about murder, obsession, and hairdressing. It looks really interesting. I have this on my radar. I believe it's getting played at some art house theaters like the Music Box near us. So I'm pretty sure they'll have it in New York this weekend. I have a link for it, so I'm going to send it to you, Zach. And I'm curious for this one. This one looks pretty good. Medusa Deluxe. But let's talk about our picks for the week, starting off with a horror movie that is out right now. I have Talk to Me on my radar, a movie we had at number 1 over at Sundance. We damn near had it at number 1 again at South by. We have it number 1 this weekend. I think you sent it to me. I don't know if they're trolling a sequel.
Yeah, it's officially announced. The boys are back too. The Philippus are going to direct it.
Well, that's all I got to say. Know as little about this as you can before you go in. Just let it wash over you. Talk to Me. My favorite horror movie of the year. Highly, highly recommended. I think one of the best releases of this weekend. The Beast is finally getting a little bit of a limited release about this couple who decides to move into a town where they were about to get bought out by these windmills. But this couple was like, nah, we kind of like it here. And the whole town hates them. A really good thriller that is super long, and I could have had it go another 15, 20 minutes. Shortcomings, another movie from Sundance that is this very awkward, annoying, miserable comedy of a dude who doesn't realize that all of his problems are caused by him. This movie has just stayed in the back of my mind. I don't think it's one of the best comedies out, but it's one that we keep quoting. It is the directorial debut of Randall Park in terms of the feature film. And I thought he did a decent job. It's rough around the edges in the best way possible. I would put it on my radar.
It's nice because there's probably there's a lot of these sort of like indie comedies about like a young man who's sort of lost in his life and trying to figure out where to go. And not nearly enough of them are the point of them is that like the guy actually just needs to stop being a piece of shit and pick himself up and get back together.
Yes.
I feel like that's a good message for a lot of young people. It's like sometimes you are the problem.
Yes. Exactly. So big shout out to Shortcomings. And then I have 2 series in case you don't want to leave your house. You can stay at home and catch a couple of episodes. The second season of This Fool. It is out on Hulu. It is pretty much, I want to say they're cousins, primos. One of them has never really been able to get his life together. And then the other one just is fresh out of prison after the first season. And it's like Bob's Burgers where they're always just trying to get by. They're always just trying to maintain a job. And this new season kind of has a lot of episodes where they'll stop and continue on in the next episode. So right now there's like a heist gone wrong at a convenience store, and none of them know how to get out of it. Really funny, and again, it's just based off of how just a bunch of cholos in LA like to just say this fool, this fool, this fool. So that's out with its season 2, as well as one of our favorites. It's been on our top TV list every single year, and it is out with a 3rd season. I don't know if you got all the screeners, Zach. They sent them to me in their new little format, so reach out for it. Because HBO's been very picky on some shows, and to us, if they're giving it to you in like that extra HBO screeners app, that means that they're really hyped up for it. And I know this man is. If you go to all of his, I don't know if they'll showcase it here, but as you can see right now, season 1, especially on HBO, it's going to be easier if you're on HBO. A lot of it was like him showing thumbnails of other people. The man's feeling himself. All the thumbnails on HBO for season 3 is him posing. Him posing in some way. Him wearing a hard hat. He is feeling himself this season, Zach. That's all I'm going to say. And he's still on it. I thought episode 1 was disgusting. So was episode 2 because it's about public restrooms and clean your ears. We keep putting it on for dinner and keep taking it off immediately and then watching it after the fact. And they are fantastic. It is a show where John Wilson goes out and about in New York where you're able to film whoever you want. And he uses B-roll footage, close-ups, all of these different things to tell a narrative of a dude who's kind of playing a character on how to get by in New York, how to get by in life. And he always just finds a way to hit it. Sometimes not every joke lands, But he's got this thing that you and I have talked about where he's because it's a documentary as well, where he's capturing these very interesting characters out there who live in the middle of nowhere, who live out in the streets, who live in his own building, and the magic that he does with a simple "wow" is a
Yeah.
reaction. He's mopped Owen Wilson for wows now in my book. You and I would highly recommend it. I know it's a recommendation for you as well. How have you been
Yeah.
feeling on this season?
I mean, so far it's excellent. It's more of the stuff that is so great. I do agree with you with that whole idea of he's feeling himself. I feel like there's like a comfort he seems to have in the interview bits as well, that he seems more loose
He's
and
locked.
just like he's enjoying it a little bit more. Like obviously he's a guy who you can hear in his voice that he carries a lot of angst and anxiety, but like I don't know. I think he's really feeling it this year, and it's been really excellent. You know, there's this one sequence where he's talking about his sexual history, and it's narrated over footage of him getting like um, hand sanitizing dispensers just shooting out little bits, and it's the way he's able to marry certain ideas with certain
Just shots, yeah.
visuals. It's brilliant. It's so funny. Even the very first shot of this new season with a guy lying down and the Empire State Building sort of perfectly positioned between his legs, like they just, it's so rich in visual jokes in a way that not a lot of TV is. I
Yeah.
really love it. I'm sad that it's its final season because I'm definitely going to
Damn.
miss it. But I'm sure he's going to find somewhere else to do this kind of some funny stuff because it's too good to not exist in the world.
Easily. And a reminder, influenced by Sacha Baron Cohen and executive produced by Nathan Fielder. And it
Yeah.
has that vibe completely. But Zach, talk about your top 5 picks for the week.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll start with a couple picks that are limited theatrical releases. So if you're lucky enough to be near a place showing them, absolutely get a try to put it on your radar. But if not, these films will likely be available not that far into the future, starting with 20 Days in Mariupol. This was, I believe, both of our favorite, or no, I guess I
You had
had
one
the
more.
Luke Lorenzen
You
one
did have one
too.
more. Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
yeah, the Luke Lorenzen, A Still Small Voice is great, but 20 Days in Mariupol is absolutely one of the standout documentaries that we saw from Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, and just one of the best films I've ever seen at making the case for the important job of frontline journalism, because the film follows these Associated Press reporters who embed themselves in Mariupol at the beginning of the Russian invasion of the country. And what's so stunning about the way that the movie's put together is it's not just sort of documenting what it was like on the ground, seeing explosions around them and seeing refugees flooding from one area to another, but there's sort of this ticking clock in the 20 days thing, and at the end of each day there's a journey or adventure or some kind of problem solving that needs to happen in terms of how these reporters are going to upload their footage so that the world's various news outlets can use that footage and disseminate it, and bring what the images that are happening on the front lines to the rest of the world. And there's all these things that if you've paid any attention to this conflict, images that you'll be familiar with, and they show you kind of the process of how those things were found, how they were captured, how they were then distributed, and you just learn so much about the role that journalism plays in keeping people informed amongst tragedies. It's a very stunning documentary, a really gripping and tough to watch film, but easily one of the best of the year. I believe after its theatrical run, it's going to get a run on PBS in September, October, something
Oh,
like that.
nice.
So worth keeping on your radar for then at least.
Great pick. 20 Days in Mariupol.
Yeah. Keeping with the Ukrainian theme, let's talk about Klondike, which was also an award winner from Sundance, the previous Sundance
Yeah, a couple of years
2022.
ago.
Yeah, and I thought this was a very stunningly directed movie about this Ukrainian family that lives very close to where the fighting first broke out, and more notably for this film, they live very close to the place where the I believe it was the Malaysian Airlines flight
Yeah,
that
the plane that
crashed.
fell.
Yeah. Um, and it's sort of one of these very interesting movies that takes a very small look at a very big idea, because
Yeah.
there's this international incident that's developing around them. There's a little plane crash that happens in this movie, but it all kind of takes place from the perspective of this family living in this area and just looking out at it all. So there'll be like a very intimate conversation about marital troubles happening, and in the background a tank rolls by. So it's one of
Yeah.
those films where it's those little details and those environmental aspects of it tell you a whole world of story. It's not necessarily the most like fast-paced movie. It's very leisurely. The camera will slowly pan across the entire room, so some people might not have the patience for it, but I think it is a really brilliantly made movie. I want to revisit this one as well.
I'm trying to remember. I think Iron Butterflies would have been a documentary that came out of Sundance this year.
Another great one. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah, let
that's
me see if I
out
can
yet.
pull this up. I don't think this is out yet, but that would be a great double feature to have, because this would be about the exact same flight that Zach was
Exactly.
mentioning. Also done, like we were saying with Cole, in a very experimental way. But then to know that Klondike is like a narrative about one of the families just chilling there when this plane came down is kind of insane. So really good pick, Klondike.
Absolutely. One more limited theatrical release I want to talk about is Kokomo City. This was another documentary out of Sundance this year that takes a look at the life of different Black transgender sex workers, and just sort of showcases their vivaciousness and their liveliness and their stories. I think a lot of times you get documentaries that try to take a look at sort of outsider culture or outsider people, and it takes it's so self-serious, and it's so focused on the tragic aspects
Mm-hmm.
of identity, that it fails to celebrate what makes people so unique and interesting and wonderful. And this is not a documentary that forgets those elements. It is, for a film that is able to talk about such serious things and such troubling circumstances, it does it with all of this like warmth and heart and charisma. I think it's just extremely watchable, partially because these personalities are so vivacious in front of the camera. They really, really open up to director D. Smith, who
Mm-hmm.
does a fantastic job capturing this film in lots of stunning black and white quality. Unfortunately, one of the subjects of this documentary has since passed away, which adds a layer of tragedy to what it depicts. But at the same time, it's also just sort of a monument to the people they are and the person she was. And I don't know, I'd highly, highly recommend this one. I think you were also a big fan of Kokomo City.
Uh, Thought it was one of the best ones that came out of the documentary section, and in particular, this was in the next category, which I found
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. But I'd wrap it up with everything that you said, with one of the quotes in the movie: "The best of you is only seen when you're a survivalist," and I think
Mm.
that's exactly what this movie is able to highlight in terms of them as just dumb venting as talking heads, and easily one of the standouts of this year. So I would also recommend Kokomo City.
Getting into a couple streaming service recommendations. This
Yeah,
one's
you
more of
gotta
a
explain
mild
this.
recommendation,
You gotta
but
explain this next one.
look, I had no interest really in the Twisted Metal series when they were announced. I have vague memories of playing the game, but it was never
Okay, so
something
you
that I
played
was
it.
that attached to. And even that first clip came out, and it seemed so kind of desperately
Uh huh.
cheesy and like, oh, this is like edgy, but also not so serious. And I don't know, there's something about the tone, like vaguely Deadpool inspired, that just rubbed
Yeah.
me the wrong way. But I don't know. I watched at least the first two episodes and found them to be pretty easy to get down. It's certainly not anything that I'm gonna have near my best movies of the year or best TV of the year list. But I think there's just a charisma to it and a pace to it that I didn't really mind. Anthony Mackie gets to kind of riff in a like, I don't know, just sort of loose way that is very fun. The series is not taking itself seriously at all. Like the threat of death doesn't feel real. It just sort of feels video gamic in a way that probably is appropriate considering the context. But I just generally thought it was easy to watch. You know, the jokes aren't great, but they're not terrible. They're not annoying. The performances and twists aren't necessarily like the most surprising, but they're not bad. And I don't know. I guess maybe this is my award for pick that wasn't nearly as
That
depressing
is
as
I
I
wanted it
expected
to
it to
be
be.
on
But
Peacock Pick.
yeah, shout out to
Fair.
Peacock, man. They got some good stuff.
Fair. Well, all they have this year, Zach, or this month, is Super Mario Bros. And nothing else. So at
Hey,
least they came out with a whole 8 episodes.
that Craig Robinson show's coming back for a second season. I didn't watch the first, but it's coming back.
Which one?
Killing it.
Oh, see, I don't even remember the first season. But I do remember this next show because
Yeah.
you told me that season 3 of this show is just as good as all the other ones. So having seen part of 1, I went and binged all of 1, wrapping up 2 right now. I still need to finish 3, but with it wrapped and continuing, right?
Mhm.
Tell me about your final pick of the week.
Hey man, I said it was just as good as the previous. Now that I've finished season 3, I'm thinking it might be the best season they've done yet. I'm really loving the Righteous Gemstones on HBO and on Max. Danny McBride's show about corrupt mega church leaders that is just so fun and hilarious, but also engaging and increasingly fascinating from a dramatic standpoint too. I think the show is just doing such a great job at developing these characters in a way. Like there's this whole almost like Succession-esque uh, layer of family being thrown in because John Goodman's character is sort of more, you know, John Goodman is the elder of this church family, and then there's the siblings sort of squabbling over who should be in control of the company. It's even two brothers and a sister, which makes it even more similar. But I think to me the real joy of the show is not only how funny all these performances are, how much space that Danny McBride gives to Adam Devine and Edie Patterson and Tony Cavallaro, Skylar Gazondo, just down the list. So many funny performances, particularly Tim Baltz as BJ is just the most hilarious creation right now on HBO. I always find him to be hysterical. But I just find the way that they resolve certain situations to be increasingly thoughtful and surprising. You know, I think comedies sometimes lack in terms of their story structure, but the story they don't skimp on story here. And particularly the way that things culminate in this season feels not just like not just like one season's worth of story, but 3 seasons worth of story landing in a place that feels appropriate and fun and great. I don't know. There's so much I like about this show. I'm glad that you're getting into the 3rd season, so maybe we can dive a little bit more deeply and talk about more specifics soon. But Righteous Gemstones, it's still kicking ass, and apparently it's going to be back for season 4 as well.
Yay. They said it's better than Succession, so find the religious Succession out on HBO. I
There
think
we
it's
go.
pretty good too. I know I was complaining about your boy, what's his name, Adam Devine, saying that he was a Jack Black spinoff that he's been trying to be, which I still kind of believe that. But he's really funny. I think out of all 3 of them, he's got the funniest daddy. Come on, daddy, because they all got really funny daddies. Danny McBride will sneak in with a good one.
Danny McBride's is quite good, but Adam Devine, he's got a certain thing to it. I also just love Edie Patterson's.
Edie Patterson is the best one on the show, and it's
she's
not
so
even
deranged.
close. No,
Yeah.
she believes everything that comes out of her mouth. And the other 2, I've seen Danny McBride for the longest time. He's playing Danny McBride again, just religious. And I've seen Adam. But there's a sparkle in her eyes when she suggests something, and it's a little too much, bro. She's the best one.
In watching the show, you come to learn that her character's somebody who's kind of always been a little bit, out there and like a feral almost in a way, because she hasn't been told no, and she hasn't really been raised knowing that she can't have things her way. And when she like dips into a certain register in her voice that just is like, it's like guttural and it's like an animal, not like a human. I find it so funny. It's so good.
Imagine Sarah Snook's character, but with like a God-given destiny in your mind that you think you're worth. It's even that more insane. But yeah, no, Righteous Gemstones. I double that one up as well. It's been a really good one to get through, and you got 3 seasons worth of it
Ah,
and counting. So, going back through them, Zach, begin with the Righteous Gemstones again.
yeah, the Righteous Gemstones, which it's basically got Succession vibes, but funnier and even more subversive. I like it a lot. I also am recommending. Where's my list here? I'm also recommending Twisted Metal. Maybe it's more of a mild recommendation, but it's a pretty enjoyable, easy to watch ride on Peacock. And yeah, it's maybe background material, but it's solid background material. Kokomo City, a absolutely mesmerizing and wonderful documentary that is just this really vivacious profile of Black transgender sex workers. Klondike, a really beautifully directed slice of life in Ukraine at the front lines of a war story. Just not exactly what you're expecting, but really interesting perspective. And then 20 Days in Mariupol, one of the best documentaries that'll come out this year, and a stunning ode to the power of frontline reporting.
Yeah, very good. That last one is going to be one where you need a breather after you catch it for 20 days. For me, How To with John Wilson, maybe that 30-minute breather that you need after seeing some of those really tense documentaries. This
Definitely.
is one that still has that message in it, but it does it in the quirkiest way. With a really hilarious narrator who finds a way to collect a lot of different images and a lot of different ideas in a day in New York and come up with something very interesting in every single episode over on HBO. This Fool on Hulu, just a really funny series catching up on a bunch of just dudes chilling in Los Angeles. It's also funny that they got Michael Imperioli from White Lotus. What's it called?
Oh, Sopranos.
Sopranos. He's also he's killer in this. He's fantastic. Not to be undersold as well. Got This Fool. Shortcomings out in limited. I believe it's getting an even wider release right now in theaters. A little Sundance gem that we really enjoyed. That is a directorial debut of Asian Jim. There is also The Beast that's getting a limited release as well. I caught this one at Chicago, and I'm very curious to see how people take this one because I thought it was really good performances all around. And I'm curious how people take that ending. And then finally, already a sequel in the works before we got to recommend it on its opening week, Talk to Me. One of the best ones out of Sundance, one of my favorite horror movies of the year, and one that I think is going to remain in my top 10 until the end of this year. But that is all for this week in movies. Zach, let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I got one more quick one. Devesh in the live streams pointing out Only Murders in the Building is back. I love that show. I think you still really enjoy that show too. Yeah, so season 3 of that over
has me
on
very
Hulu.
curious because that's
Meryl Streep,
that is
Paul
like
Rudd.
Meryl Streep, Paul Rudd. It's gonna be
Hell yeah.
it's gonna be a little bit different. I have not seen a jump that big in a show in a while. That's like a massive jump.
They
because
replaced Divine Joy Randolph in a good way.
So good on them. All right, and I think we have all. Is that one going to be weekly?
Yeah, I believe Only Murders is weekly. They usually do 3 and then weekly. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. We'll be back to talk about that one as well. But
when
you do catch the first episode, where can they catch you?
You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Letterboxd at Zshevich, Zshevich, and check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Arturo, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Movies on all the different social medias or every week here on the Intercut podcast. A reminder that you can listen to every episode on the Intercut podcast on iTunes where we're asking for those 5-star reviews. We're trying to get 999 now. If we can get 999, I think that will allow us to get Talk to Me at least a week early when that one does come out. You could also listen in on Anchor, Spotify, all of your favorite podcatchers. You can catch the live video here on YouTube.com every Monday. It's Tuesday because I was snoozing after Lollapalooza. The Red Hot Chili Peppers concert was a little too much. But I will say this about Red Hot Chili Peppers. I've never seen the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the same room. And I'm starting to believe, especially with the way Flea had his haircut, they may be the same. And I know it's a little out there because clearly they're not teenagers anymore. Yeah. But they got that energy of the mutants in there. A big shout out to
We'll get to the bottom of that.
we will get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Big shout out to all the Intercuties who listen live, all of the patrons, like we said, all the iTunes listeners who leave us that 5-star review. Don't forget to leave a comment here, drop a like, follow the socials on Intercut Pod, where Zach is going to be updating that bracket that we've been making. If you're an Intercutie over on the Patreon, sorry, we're going to be doing the Nolan bracket, if not the DC one, next week. So next Monday, for $1, you can join our little special hangout that we do with all the Intercutie patrons. But until next time, keep watching movies, and we'll send you an exclusive Oppenheimer sweepstakes, I don't know, IMAX pass so that you can see it yourself.
Just want his hat.